The Cave of Shadows. Some memories are carved in stone. Others refuse to stay buried. By Adeline Pierce. Copyright 2025 Adeline Pierce. All rights reserved. Prologue. Valmora Bay, Cornwall, low tide. The wind tasted like salt and rust. When Elisa stepped off the ferry, the light was already low, sharp and metallic, thin as a blade. Valmora Bay had once been a postcard town in her memories. Calm summer water, fishing boats rocking like cradles. But now the sky pressed down in a heavy gray sheet, and the cliffs seemed to fold the town into a gesture of custody that felt too tight, too private. Her suitcase bumped unevenly over the cobblestones. The smell of seaweed and wet rope clung to her clothes. Seagulls screamed overhead, their cries thin and splintered like torn paper. Windows along the harbor blurred with condensation. Behind them, silhouettes paused just a second too long, watching. She carried a cardboard box close to her chest. Fine brushes, scalpels for scraping, cotton swabs soaked in neutral solvent, and her restoration journal. Every mural held a confession. You had to learn how to read the wounds without deepening them. The job had sounded clean enough. Recently discovered prehistoric mural inside a coastal cave. Low tide access. Municipality contract. Money she desperately needed. Distance she needed even more. Nathan Crowell, the geologist who had discovered the cave, had called her with a tone that was too measured to be casual. "We don't know what we found." Meaning, Elisa had asked, treat it with respect. She thought he was being dramatic. She smiled. Later, she would remember that smile as a mistake. The cave entrance revealed itself only when the sea retreated, like the opening of a mouth deciding whether to speak. Elisa followed Nathan along a narrow limestone ledge. The tide whispered below, brushing the rock with a patient, hungry rhythm. Inside, her lantern's beam seemed absurdly small. The air was cold enough to sting. Moisture dripped in slow intervals, echoing into the chamber. The mural waited at the end of a natural corridor, not large, but alive in color. Ochre, deep marine blue, a red so vibrant it looked recent. Figures intertwined. Abstract impossible. A central shape dominated the composition. Not an eye, a hollow, a symbol without a center, an emptiness. Elisa stepped closer, breath shallow. Her hand, without asking permission, touched the stone. The cold that entered her palm was not temperature. It was memory. Images flickered against her eyelids. A torch, voices chanting, water swallowing a scream. She pulled back abruptly, heart hammering. A flake of paint loosened and fell. Instinctively, she caught it. A tiny fragment, but the pigment was still vibrant. She wrapped it carefully in tissue. Behind her, something shifted. Not air, not water. A posture. Elisa spun around, lantern trembling in her grip. Nothing, only the mural. The dripping water, the mouth of the cave beyond. But she felt it, felt eyes from within the paint, from within the rock itself. The tide began to rise. It was time to leave. Elisa exited the cave with a fragment hidden in her pocket. The wind struck her face as if to wake her from a dream, but she knew she hadn't imagined it. She had taken something, and something had noticed. Chapter 1. Before the Bay. London smelled of rain and old ambitions. Elisa Moretti paced quickly along the wet pavement of South Kensington, clutching a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Her scarf was still stained with tiny dots of cobalt blue pigment, a stubborn reminder of the place she was trying to forget, the place where everything had gone wrong. The morning traffic was a restless symphony. Impatient horns, cyclists swearing, buses sighing at every stop. Elisa felt as if the entire city were vibrating around her, while she moved through it like a blurred ghost. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. "Margaret, please return the museum keys by Friday. HR needs them." No greeting, no goodbye, just another reminder that her presence was no longer welcome. Elisa shoved the phone back in her pocket, throat tight. Inside the museum, she had given 3 years of her life to preserving other people's masterpieces, restoring colors, repairing time. She used to believe that careful hands could fix anything. She didn't believe that anymore. The memory hit her without warning. The gallery room, the white lights, the silence. She stood over a 19th century Venetian painting, its surface delicate like dried petals. The restoration plan required authorization for every chemical, but the authorization never came, and the deadline tightened around her like a noose. "I'll just stabilize the area," she whispered to herself. "No one will notice. It's the right solvent it will hold." Then a crack. A pale flake of paint fell like a dead snowflake. Her heart stopped. She didn't breathe again until Dr. Navarro stepped in. Her boss, her mentor, the woman who had once believed in her. "What did you do?" Navarro's voice carried the coldness of glass. It was fragile. "I tested. You acted without permission." A razor blade of a sentence, loud enough for everyone in the room. A few colleagues froze. Elisa saw the judgment in their eyes, felt the moment label her. Incompetent, impulsive, a mistake. "Get out of the lab," Navarro said. "You're suspended. Effective immediately." The museum swallowed Elisa's silence whole. Back in the present, she pushed open the door of her tiny basement flat in Chelsea. The air smelled like dust and resignation. Cardboard boxes crowded the living room, the result of 2 sleepless nights of packing. On top of a half-closed suitcase lay the printed email. Volunteer position, Valmora Bay, South Coast. Preservation of water-damaged art. Start date, immediate. Elisa ran her fingers over the paper. She hadn't even interviewed properly. They needed someone fast, and she needed to disappear faster. She grabbed a notebook and sat on the floor, knees pulled up to her chest. She wrote a list with uneven handwriting. Leave keys at museum cancel, Oyster card tell. No one at the bottom. She added one last line. Start over. A tear hit the page. Not delicate, not elegant, just heavy and real. Her suitcase clicked shut, sealing the decision. Elisa looked around her empty flat. The blank walls, the plant she wouldn't water again, the tube map pinned to fridge. She had loved London once. The museums, the fog, the late-night buses, the endless possibility of it all. But now the city felt like an audience that had seen her fall and refused to look away. She took a deep breath. "Goodbye," she whispered to no one. At dawn, she dragged her suitcase through the quiet street toward the underground station. The train lights blurred behind thin layers of rain on her lashes. She didn't look back. On the platform, a gust of wind scattered an old newspaper at her feet. The headline stared up at her. Art conservator suspended after incident in restoration lab. Her throat tightened. Someone had written a story about her failure. She folded the paper in half and shoved it into a bin. A voice echoed through the station. Train to the South Coast arriving in 2 minutes. South Coast. New place. New air. She exhaled slowly and stepped toward the future. Uncertain, terrifying, necessary. When the train doors closed, Elisa pressed her forehead to the cold window glass. London slid away, a blur of gray and regret. But somewhere far ahead, there was a bay, a church wall, a painting no one remembered, and a chance to fix something again, even if it wasn't herself. Chapter 2. The Arrival. The sea was the first thing she heard. Not the waves, but the breath between them. A long inhale, a long exhale, as if the ocean itself were sleeping. The bus from London slowed down on the coastal road, tires hissing on gravel. Elisa pressed her forehead to the window, watching the fog peel away from the cliffs like thin silk. Valmora Bay hadn't appeared yet, but the air had changed. It tasted of salt and iron and something wild. A sharp contrast from London's chemical tang, turpentine, varnish, and the sterile scent of climate-controlled galleries. Her fingers still smelled faintly of solvent, as if the mistake in the museum had been absorbed into her skin. The bus jerked to a stop. A sign swung lazily in the wind. Valmora Bay, population 812, welcome, and return what is not yours. The last line looked handwritten, etched into the wood like a warning. Elisa blinked. When she looked again, the wind had shifted the sign, and she could only read the population number. Maybe she imagined it. Her suitcase thumped onto the gravel, as she stepped off the bus. The road was deserted. A cat watched her from a stone wall, its fur the exact gray of the sky. "Hi," Elisa murmured. The cat blinked slowly, unimpressed, then leapt down and disappeared into the fog. A voice carried toward her from the harbor. Wood creaked. A rope snapped against a mast. Elisa adjusted her coat and followed the narrow road toward the village. The houses appeared slowly, like shapes pushing through thick watercolor. Small cottages with chip paint, windows glowing with amber light, a bakery with outdoor seating. Empty, chairs stacked as if no one had sat there for years. A pub with a faded sign. The Blue Gull. A chalkboard read, "Tonight, Fisherman Stories, open mic." Elisa almost laughed. In London, people booked their entire week on calendars. Here, people shared sea stories. A gust of wind pushed her forward, and suddenly she saw it. The bay, a wide crescent of gray-blue water and jagged rocks, framed by a cliff on one side and a small pier on the other. The ocean inhaled slowly, exhaled deeply, and for the first time in weeks, her chest loosened. SEA Glass INN, rooms and breakfast a sign above the door leaned slightly to the left, as if exhausted. Inside, the bell jingled weakly. A woman in her late 60s appeared from a back room. Silver hair, round glasses, a knitted cardigan so colorful that Elisa thought of the paint samples she used to catalog. "Oh, love, you must be Elisa Moretti," the woman said, voice warm as fresh tea. "I'm Nora. Welcome to the Sea Glass Inn." Elisa forced a smile. "Thank you. The journey was long. And heavy, I imagine," Nora added, eyes dropping to Elisa's suitcase. Elisa froze for a second, wondering if Nora meant emotional weight. But Nora simply winked and leaned closer. "We get a lot of people who come here carrying too much. This place lightens them." Elisa didn't know what to say to that. Nora led her upstairs. The kitchen's always open. Tea, biscuits, leftover pie. Nobody leaves hungry here. Not if I can help it. They reached a door at the end of the corridor. Nora unlocked it and stepped aside. Elisa entered. Room painted in soft cream tones. White linens. A window facing the sea. The wind pressed against the glass with a long sigh, as if greeting her. Nora placed an old copper key on the desk. "Breakfast is at 7, but if you wake earlier, the fishermen always appreciate help untangling nets." Elisa gave a shy laugh. "I'm not sure I have the skills for that. You'd be surprised what we're capable of when we start fresh." For a moment, the sentence hung in the air. A beginning or a challenge. Nora left, closing the door quietly. Elisa opened the window. The cold air hit her face like truth. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. For a moment, the museum disappeared. The sterile corridors, the harsh voices, Dr. Navarro's disappointed stare. She imagined those moments dissolving into the sea. When she opened her eyes, something gleamed on the windowsill. A seashell, small, spiral-shaped, perfectly white, polished like bone. She hadn't seen it when she entered. There was a pattern carved into it. 3 lines crossing at the center, almost like a symbol, a sigil. She brushed her thumb over it. The shell was warm. Her heart stuttered. Someone must have placed it there, she told herself. A welcome gift, a decorative detail, nothing more. But then she heard it, a sound so soft that she might have imagined it. A whisper, coming from the hollow of the shell. "Return what was taken." Elisa dropped it. The shell fell to the wooden floor and did not break. The whisper died with it. Thunder rolled in the distance. The sea inhaled and exhaled slowly, as if waiting. Elisa's pulse hammered in her throat. Her life in London had ended with a fracture she couldn't undo. Her new life had just begun with a whisper she couldn't explain. She knelt, picked up the shell, and held it to her chest. "Whatever this is," she whispered, "I'm not running again." Outside, the wind rose suddenly. The ocean breathed, and somewhere in Valmora Bay, something ancient listened. Chapter 3. The Chapel on the Cliff. The conch shell lay on her bedside table, pale in the morning light. Elisa stared at it as if it were a living thing. Maybe she had imagined the whisper, maybe the exhaustion, and the emotional wreckage from London were playing tricks on her. Yet the symbol carved into the shell, the same 3 crossing lines, was still there. Sharp, precise, intentional. She dressed slowly, pulling on jeans and a cream sweater, then tied her hair in a loose knot. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured water from the sink into a glass. She needed caffeine, not superstition. Downstairs, the sea glass smelled like warm cinnamon and orange peel. Nora was already in the kitchen, whisking eggs in a ceramic bowl painted with tiny gulls. "Morning, love," Nora said without turning. "Sleep well." Elisa hesitated. "No." Nora kept whisking, but something in her shoulders tensed. "Just barely. First nights here can be noisy," the older woman replied. Her eyes flicked to the shell-shaped pendant around her own neck, barely visible under her cardigan. "The sea talks to new arrivals." Elisa's breath caught. "The sea." Nora placed scrambled eggs and toast on a plate, then pushed it toward her. "Eat. You'll need your strength today. The chapel isn't forgiving." "The chapel?" Elisa repeated. "Yes, the restoration work. Didn't they tell you?" Nora dried her hands on a towel. "The murals are in St. Bridget's Chapel, up on the cliff path. Follow the stairs from the harbor, and keep right when the path splits." Elisa blinked. "I thought the art was stored in a local archive." Nora shook her head gently. "No, dear, it's still on the wall, where it belongs." After breakfast, Elisa stepped outside. The sky was clear, the air sharp as glass. The sea sprayed cold salt on her cheeks as she approached the harbor steps. An older fisherman paused from sorting ropes and grinned at her. "You must be the art girl," he said, accent thick and musical. "Elisa," she offered. He nodded once. "Jack will be up there." "Jack!" But the fisherman had already gone back to the ropes. She climbed the stone stairs carved directly into the cliff. Wind slashed through her sweater and pushed her hair loose, but the view was worth the climb. Valmora Bay stretched below, small, self-contained, secretive. At the top, she found him, a man kneeling near the cliff's edge, working on a wooden frame with a hand plane. Jeans rolled to the ankle, boots worn with salt, dark hair caught in the wind. He stood when he heard her steps. "You must be Elisa." His voice was warm, surprisingly so, not probing, not judgmental. She swallowed. "How do you know who I am?" He wiped his hands on his shirt, leaving faint streaks of sawdust. "Everyone knows when someone new arrives." He smiled faintly, "especially when they carry ghosts." Elisa stiffened. I don't carry ghosts." Jack tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly, like he saw right through her. "Here," he said, gesturing to the small stone structure behind him. "St. Bridget's Chapel." The building looked abandoned, weathered walls covered in creeping moss. The wooden door was reinforced with iron bars. Salt air had eaten at the hinges. Jack handed her an old key. "Be careful. Some things inside don't like to be disturbed." Elisa forced a laugh. "You mean the dampness or the ghosts?" Jack didn't laugh. Instead, he said quietly, "Nothing stays hidden here." The wind rose suddenly, tugging at her coat. Elisa stepped toward the chapel. The door groaned open. A blast of icy air met her. It smelled of humidity, salt, and old secrets. The interior was darker than she expected. Only a few narrow windows allowed thin blades of light through. The stone floor was uneven, worn by centuries of feet. But her gaze went immediately to the far wall. The mural, or what was left of it. Faded pigments clung stubbornly to the plaster. Salt had eaten portions of the paint, leaving behind ghostly outlines. The outer edges had crumbled into powder, yet the central figure remained, an indistinct silhouette of a woman, wearing a flowing shape that might have been a dress or a cloak. And in the figure's hand, unmistakable even beneath the decay, a spiral object with 3 intersecting lines. Her pulse spiked, the symbol on the shell. She stepped closer, fingertips trembling in her gloves. The halo of salt around the paint shimmered like frost in the shifting light. "You're not supposed to touch the wall." Jack's voice broke the silence. He had followed her in. "I wasn't going to," Elisa lied, lowering her hand. He crossed his arms. "You should know. People here are protective of that mural. Why? Jack hesitated. Because some say she protects us. Elisa frowned. Who is she supposed to be? No one knows. The chapel's older than the town. Older than the church records. His voice dropped. Older than our memory. Elisa stepped even closer to mural, ignoring the sharp sting of cold air. The pigment was not just faded. It was displaced in irregular patterns. It didn't match any water damage she had ever studied. Something interfered with the paint from the inside. She set her backpack on a bench and took out gloves, a moisture tester, her flashlight. "May I?" she asked. Jack watched her steadily. "You can try, but she doesn't like strangers." Elisa turned on the flashlight and angled the beam along the plaster. Fine cracks shimmered beneath the paint. Not cracks. Veins. White veins. They pulsed faintly as if something moved inside. She blinked hard. Her rational brain kicked in, salt crystals expanding beneath the paint. That was all. Salt crystallization could create patterns, sometimes even geometric ones. But she knew what she felt. The mural was not passive. Elisa leaned in, studying the spiral object in the painted figure's hand. 3 lines crossing, exactly like the shell. A shiver ran down her spine. She touched her pocket, where she had placed the shell that morning before leaving the inn. Jack noticed. "You brought one," he said. Elisa froze. "One what?" "A seed token." She hadn't told him about it. Nora hadn't seen it. No one had. "How do you?" Jack's expression hardened, eyes darkening like storm water. "You shouldn't carry what isn't yours." The air thickened. The chapel seemed to close in around them. Elisa took a step back. "Jack, what is happening here?" He held her gaze, voice barely above a whisper. "Something in this town wakes when outsiders touch the past." Elisa looked again at the mural, and for the briefest moment, she swore the painted woman turned her head, just enough to see her. Elisa stumbled back, breath caught in her throat. The shell in her pocket felt suddenly hot against her skin. The sea wind howled outside. Jack stepped closer, lower voice rough with warning. "You still have time to leave." Elisa steadied her breathing, raised her chin. "I didn't come here to run." Jack exhaled slowly, as if he already knew she'd say that. "Then the Bay will decide what you owe." Chapter 4. The first night. The sea glassed and felt strangely louder after sunset, not with noise, but with presence. Elisa sat in the small dining room with a bowl of vegetable soup cooling in front of her. A few locals, 2 fishermen, a young woman mending nets, and a man with a scar across his jaw, were chatting at another table. Their voices dropped when Elisa mentioned the chapel. "It's beautiful," she had said casually, spooning soup. "The mural." All conversation stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. The scarred man leaned forward, voice low. "Some places don't like being disturbed." Elisa gave a polite smile, the kind meant to soften tension. "It's just a restoration project." The young woman with the nets didn't look up from her hands. "Then restore it," she murmured, weaving rope through rope, "and leave it alone." Nora appeared suddenly, placing bread on the table with unnecessary force. "Enough," she said, tone bright but eye sharp. "Elisa has had a long day. Let's not drown her in old stories." Old stories. That was the only phrase Elisa caught before the conversation shifted to tides and fishing quotas. But the tone lingered, as if she had asked about something forbidden. Later, in her room, Elisa closed the door softly and leaned against it. Silence wrapped around her like a blanket. She opened her bag, removed her notebook, and began writing. Day 2. Initial observation. Mural severely salt damaged. Pattern irregular. Jack seems guarded? She tapped the pen against the paper. Guarded wasn't the right word. Warning. That was closer. Her eyes drifted to the conch shell resting innocently on the bedside table. She hadn't told anyone about it. Not Nora, not Jack. It wasn't supposed to be there. She had found it on the windowsill when she arrived. She picked it up. Cool. Smooth. Nothing strange. "You are exhausted," she told herself. She placed the shell back on the table, turned off the lamp, and crawled under the covers. Wind. It howled against the window, rattling the frame. For a moment, she thought she heard footsteps in the hallway, and she held her breath listening. The sound faded. Then came another sound. Thump, from downstairs, like someone setting something down on the kitchen counter. Probably Nora, she reasoned, or one of the guests getting tea. But the sound came again. Thump, heavier this time. Elisa slipped out of bed and padded quietly to the door. The floorboards groaned under her feet as she descended the stairs. The common room was dark. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and baking. "Nora," she whispered. No answer. She moved toward the kitchen. Empty. A mug sat on the table, still steaming, as if someone had just left it. But the room was silent. Her skin prickled. She backed away slowly, fingers brushing the wooden doorframe as though it could anchor her. On her way upstairs, she paused. Something was different. The conch shell. She stopped breathing. It was no longer on the bedside table. It sat on the windowsill, exactly where she had first found it. Elisa stared at it, trying to recall if she had absent-mindedly moved it before going downstairs. She replayed the moment in her head. She remembered picking it up, examining it, setting it back on the bedside table. She was sure. Carefully, she approached the shell. The moonlight cast silver beams across its surface. Elisa touched it with one fingertip. Cold, innocent, ordinary. "It's just exhaustion," she whispered to the empty room, forcing a tiny laugh. She returned it to the nightstand with deliberate slowness, almost as if she expected the shell to move again while she watched. She climbed into bed, pulled the duvet up around her, and reached the switch off the lamp. That was when she saw it. On the inside of the fogged-up window pane, drawn in moisture, 3 intersecting lines. The same symbol as a mural. The same as the carved shell. Elisa froze. It's condensation, she told herself. Shapes can form naturally. She wiped the glass with her palm. The symbol vanished. She exhaled. But just as she turned away, the wind rose with sudden force, slamming against the glass. For a heartbeat, she thought she heard her name carried with it. She pulled the blankets over her head and whispered into the darkness, "It's just the wind." The wind did not answer, but it didn't leave either. Chapter 5. The Archivist. Morning light dripped into Elisa's room like diluted honey. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the perfectly still conch shell on the nightstand. It had not moved during the night. It hadn't warmed, vibrated, or whispered. Nothing, which made her feel ridiculous for having been afraid. It was just exhaustion, she told herself. You're in a new place, alone, with too many emotions and not enough sleep. Yet she wrapped the shell in a handkerchief and slipped it into her bag before leaving the room, just in case. Downstairs, Nora was slicing apples for a pie. She smiled the same warm, bright smile as always, but Lisa noticed something new. Nora avoided eye contact, almost as if she knew Elisa had seen the symbol. "Off to the chapel again?" Nora asked. "Not yet. I want to look at the archives first." "Archives?" Nora's voice thinned. "There's not much to see." Elisa slung her bag over her shoulder. "I'd still like to check." Nora wiped her hands on a towel. Her voice softened. "Be careful what you look for." That sentence lingered long after Elisa stepped outside. The Valmora Historical Archive was above the pub The Blue Gull, wedged between 2 narrow brick buildings like an afterthought. A faded sign hung crooked above a red door. "Town Records and Archives Private Collection. Ask before entering." Elisa knocked. No answer. She pushed the door open gently. A small bell chimed overhead, releasing the scent of dust and old paper. The room was cramped, filled with shelves that bent under the weight of disorganized files. A large wooden desk sat beside the only window. A man stood behind it, surrounded by stacks of books as if protecting a fort. Elisa cleared her throat. "Good morning." The man didn't react. He continued flipping through a ledger with long, ink-stained fingers. His glasses sat at the very edge of his nose. "Excuse me." Elisa tried again. Without looking up, he said, "Records from 1920 to 2000 are on the left. Everything prior to that is incomplete and, in many cases, inaccurate. Return items to their original location. Elisa hesitated. I was actually hoping to find information on deaths, shipwrecks, storms. He snapped the ledger shut. Tourists always want disasters. I'm not a tourist. That made him look up. He studied her, coat still damp from sea air, hair messy from wind, eyes tired. After a long beat, he nodded once. Thomas Gray, he said, archivist. Elisa Navarro. He gestured lazily at the shelves. If you're doing a heritage project, the council keeps a file on lighthouses and public buildings. Nothing here will interest. I'm working on the chapel, she interrupted. Silence, not just his. The whole room seemed to still. Slowly, Thomas removed his glasses. What chapel? St. Bridget's, she replied. Up on the cliff. It has a mural. Very old. Thomas blinked once. Twice. There is no mural in that chapel. Yes, Elisa said, confused. I saw it yesterday. His jaw tightened. That chapel is sealed. It has been in use for decades. Elisa unzipped her bag, pulled out her notebook, and flipped to the drawing of the symbol. 3 intersecting lines. I'm trying to understand this. It appears inside the chapel. On the mural, she expected curiosity, or at least skepticism. Instead, Thomas recoiled as if she had placed a dead thing on his desk. Where did you see that? He whispered. In the chapel. And someone carved it on a shell that was left in my room. She regretted the words a moment they left her mouth. But it was too late. Thomas stood abruptly, pushing back his chair. He crossed the room, pulled a wooden box from a locked cabinet, and set it on the desk. The lock clicked open. Inside were fragile documents tied with twine. He untied a bundle and handed her a photograph, sepia-toned, faded around the edges. A mural, the same one Elisa saw yesterday, only different. In the photo, the central figure's face was intact, clear, defined, a young woman with dark hair and unreadable eyes. In her hand, the spiral object, the same shape as the conch shell. Elisa's breath hitched. In this image, the paint is untouched, she whispered. No salt erosion. Thomas swallowed. His voice was barely audible. That photograph is from 1890. Elisa looked closer. A handwritten note was scrawled across the bottom. The Bay chooses who may stay. Her fingers trembled slightly. When was this taken? Shortly before the chapel was closed. The previous archivist wrote. Thomas stopped himself. Wrote what? She leaned in. What happened to the mural? Thomas hesitated for a long, heavy moment, then pulled out a journal, delicate pages filled with tiny handwriting. He flipped to an entry marked with a ribbon. January 3rd. The woman in the mural appears changed again. The villagers are uneasy. They say she watches. I have covered her face with cloth, yet the cloth falls each dawn. Elisa's skin prickled. That isn't possible, she murmured. Thomas closed the journal sharply and slid it away. This is why the chapel was sealed. The mural unsettles people. That doesn't explain the symbol. No, Thomas said quietly. It doesn't. He reached into the box again and handed her the photograph. Take it, he said. You'll need it. Elisa turned it over. On the back, written in faded ink, don't look her in the eyes. The archivist returned to his desk as if the conversation were over. Elisa stepped back, clutching the photo. Why are you helping me? She asked. Thomas didn't look up. I'm not helping you. A pause. I'm warning you. She left the archive with the old photograph tucked tight against her chest. Outside, the wind from the sea rose suddenly, like a whisper or a warning. The morning of the craft fair was unusually warm, the sky brushed with streaks of honey gold light. Elisa walked toward the Marina Plaza, carrying a portfolio case and a knot of doubt in her stomach. Blend in, she reminded herself. If they don't look at you, they can't follow you. Ray had convinced her the night before. Meet people. Sell your name. Make them like you before they start asking questions. But deep down, Elisa knew that wasn't the real reason. She needed to feel normal. A woman carrying a folding table waved her over. You're Ray's friend, right? The art doctor? Elisa, she corrected, forcing a smile. They assigned her a spot beneath a string of hanging lights. The breeze smelled like ocean salt, rope, and grilled cedar salmon from a nearby food truck. Elisa set out a small display. A few photographs of the mural, close-up shots of textures and pigments she'd taken for reference. Then she hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the most striking one, the fragment with the red eye. It wasn't just a color. It felt sentient. She pinned it last at the far corner. Barely a second passed before she sensed someone standing behind her, not just watching, studying. An elderly woman, skin like folded paper, wrapped in a shawl the color of storm clouds. Her pupils trembled as she stared at the photograph. Her voice came as a thread of air. "You should destroy that." Elisa blinked. "Excuse me?" The woman's eyes never moved from the image. "You don't know what you've awakened." Without another word, she stepped back and disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by chatter and the smell of fried dough. Elisa exhaled slowly. What the hell? She tried to shake it off, smiling politely at passers-by. People admired her photos, made small compliments about the mysterious style, but nobody wanted to talk about the actual mural. Whenever she asked what they knew, they suddenly had somewhere else to be. A younger woman approached her stand, holding an iced coffee and a canvas tote. "Hey, you're the new restorer, right? Elisa Navarro?" Elisa nodded. "I am. Have we met?" The girl shook her head. "I'm Tessa. My grandmother used to talk about that mural, said it was cursed." She lowered her voice. "And that someone like you came here once. Before." Elisa felt a jolt in her ribs. Someone like me, meaning? A restorer. She studied the mural for a few weeks, and then Tessa bit her lip. She disappeared. No trace. Elisa's mouth went dry. "Do you remember her name?" Tessa hesitated. "I think it started with an M." Before Elisa could ask more, a shadow fell across the table. Stamp Riley. His hands rested in his pockets, shoulders squared. He wasn't wearing his usual grin. No sleeves, no innuendo. Just stillness. Something unreadable in his gaze. He pointed at the red-eye photo. "That one." His voice was flat. "Take it down." Elisa swallowed hard. "Why?" Stamp leaned closer, his breath carrying the faint smell of cigarettes and wintergreen gum. "Because it watches back." He walked away before she could respond. Hours passed. Elisa pretended to focus on the fair, but her pulse never returned to normal. The sun sank, the plaza thinned out, and she began packing her things. As she slid the last photograph into her portfolio, something fluttered to the ground. A folded piece of paper. She opened it. Block letters. Sharp. Angry. "Stop digging." On the back, a hand-drawn symbol. The same red eye from the mural. Elisa's heartbeat thundered through her chest. Someone wasn't just watching. Someone was warning her, or threatening her. And the worst part was a cold certainty tightening around her mind. This wasn't coming from strangers. Someone here knew exactly who she was, and what she had already begun to uncover. Chapter 6. Under the Skin of the Wall. Morning light broke through Elisa's curtains like thin blades of silver. She hadn't slept. Not really. Any time she drifted toward unconsciousness, her mind replayed the message. Stop digging. Who had left it? Why was the same symbol, the red eye, appearing everywhere she turned? She dressed in silence, tie her hair back with quick, sharp movements. Ignorance is how they win, she told herself. If someone wanted her scared, she would do the opposite. She grabbed her field bag, the portable UV lamp, and her phone. No breakfast, no coffee. Determination was an energy source on its own. The museum, Valmora Bay Heritage Center, 9:22 a.m. The museum's front door was unlocked. Strange. Elisa closed it behind her quietly and walked past the ticket counter. The lights were off except for a few safety lamps that pooled warm yellow onto the polished floor. Ray's office door was half open. "Ray!" she called. Silence. She took a step inside. His jacket was thrown over the chair, a coffee cup still steaming on the desk. So he was here. She headed toward the restoration wing, the restricted area where the mural was stored. The corridor seemed darker than usual. The hum of the dehumidifiers vibrated through the walls. When she reached the door to the storage room, she froze. The door was closed, and she heard something behind it, a shuffling sound, something dragging. Elisa knocked. "Ray!" The sound stopped. Her skin prickled. "Ray, is someone in there?" Nothing. Then a metallic click. The door unlocked. Ray stood in the corridor, flushed, breathing heavier than normal, like someone had just been caught doing something he shouldn't. "Elisa! Hey!" He forced a smile. "Didn't hear you come in." She stared at him. "You weren't answering." "Oh, right. Sorry." He wiped sweat from his forehead, just organizing supplies. Boring stuff. The words were wrong. Too fast. Too rehearsed. Elisa let the silence stretch, waiting to see if he would break. He didn't. She walked past him without another word. The murale room. The room swallowed her in cool air and the sterile smell of chemicals. Dehumidifiers hummed. The mural stood where it always did. Massive, silent, a wall of ghostly figures frozen in the half-light. But Elisa felt different today. She didn't approach it as a restorer. She approached it like someone hunting the truth. She set up the portable UV lamp, its blacklight beam flickering before settling into a steady violet glow. Elisa slipped on nitrile gloves. "Let's see what you're hiding." She raised the UV beam toward the fragment with the red eye. The pigment responded instantly, not just fluorescing, thrumming, like a pulse trapped in paint. Heart rate rising. She moved the light along the wall, and something appeared. Letters, at first faint, then carving themselves into the darkness with eerie clarity. "He sees you." Elisa stumbled backward, breath lost. She stared at the words, chest tight. Her logical mind raced for explanations. Pigment aging unevenly, chemical residues, microbial decay. But none of them wrote sentences. "Ray!" she called, just to prove she wasn't afraid. No response. A chill crept up her spine. She lifted the light again, sweeping lower along the wall. Another sentence revealed itself. Fragmented, harder to read, as if scratched on the first layer of plaster. "He never left." Elisa's pulse hammered against her ribs. Suddenly, thud, the storage door slammed shut behind her. Elisa whirled around. "Ray!" Her voice cracked. "Ray, open the door." She grabbed the handle. It didn't move. Locked. Her breath caught, rapid and shallow. She pounded the door with her fist. "Ray, stop messing around. Open the door." No answer. Behind her, something shifted. A sigh, soft, barely audible, like breath moving through stone. Elisa turned back toward the mural. The red eye looked sharper now, more defined than moments ago, as if the pain had deepened on its own. It stared straight at her. Her voice fell to a whisper. "No, no, that's impossible." But she couldn't look away. She lifted her trembling hand, reaching toward the mural, compelled. Her fingers were inches away when, bang, a loud crack split the silence. The light bulb over her head exploded, showering tiny crystalline dust. Elisa screamed. The UV lamp flickered in her hands. Heartbeat roaring in her ears. She pressed herself against the exit door, breathing hard. Footsteps finally echoed outside. "Elisa?" Ray's voice. Calm, too calm. "What happened?" The door unlocked and swung open. She stumbled out. The lights, the eye, there were words. Ray placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his expression unreadable. "Elisa, you need rest. Come on." But as he led her down the corridor, she glanced back. Just before the door closed, she saw it one last time, the eye on the mural still glowing faintly in the dark, watching. Chapter 7. The records they tried to erase. The rain began as a thin mist over Valmora Bay, then thickened into steady drops that streaked the windshield of Elisa's rental car. Wipers cut slow arcs across the glass as she drove toward Town Hall, the last place, she hoped, where questions could still have answers. The windshield fogged lightly, giving the world a blurred softness. She didn't feel soft. She felt hunted. Inside her coat pocket, she could still feel the folded warning someone had slipped under a photograph at the fair. Stop digging. Well, She was digging, and she intended to dig deeper. Valmora Bay Municipal Archives. Lower level, town hall. The archives were hidden beneath the building like a forgotten basement, past a hallway lined with peeling paint and corked bulletin boards displaying community notices. Elisa hesitated at the door. Her heart tapped lightly against her ribs. In and out, get the history. No attention. She pushed the door open. Inside, a single desk lamp cast a cone of warm light over a sea of stacked cardboard boxes and filing cabinets that looked older than the building itself. A woman sat behind the desk, silver hair pulled into a loose bun, reading glasses perched halfway down her nose. She looked up. "Oh, hello there." She smiled, kind but guarded. "Not many people come down here." "I'm looking for historical information on the mural at the Heritage Museum," Elisa said, keeping her voice steady. "Anything about its origin, artist records, contracts, city approvals." The woman blinked slowly, smile fading. "The mural on West Storage?" "Yes." The woman cleared her throat softly. "We don't have anything about that one. No files? No permits? No artist registration." Her tone sharpened. "A mural that size doesn't just appear." The archivist shifted in her seat. "Elisa, is it?" Her heart skipped. "How does she know my name?" "I just heard someone mention you," the woman added. Too quickly. "Valmora's small." Elisa stepped closer. "Someone mentioned me, or someone warned you?" A muscle twitched in the woman's jaw. Then, unexpectedly, she stood across the room and opened a lower cabinet drawer. She rifled through a pile of folders without labels, digging deeper, until she pulled out one that was warped and half-crushed, as if someone had tried to destroy it. The tab had no title, only a strip of tape. The woman handed it to Elisa. "No one brought this to be filed properly," she murmured. "Sometimes that means it was never meant to exist." Elisa's pulse thudded. Inside were brittle sheets of paper and a Polaroid photograph, yellowed and fading at the edges. The mural, years earlier, before age and salt had eaten through the paint. Her breath caught. The eye was not red. It was dull brown, lifeless, harmless. Someone had altered it. She flipped the photograph over. A name scrawled in faded ink. Matteo Rinaldi, 1987. "Who is this?" Elisa asked. The archivist exhaled through her nose. "Local artist. Brilliant. Troubled. They hired him to restore certain colonial paintings in town." She lowered her voice, as if walls could listen. "Then he became obsessed with that mural. Said it wasn't symbolic. Said it was a doorway." Elisa felt a shiver crawl beneath her skin. Doorway to what? Nora. She had noticed a nameplate now. Shook her head. No one ever found out. One day, he vanished. Left all his supplies on site. Stopped answering calls. The project was quietly closed. Closed. Elisa repeated, tasting the word. Or covered up? Nora looked at her. Really looked. Eyes filled with a mix of warning and pity. "You're not the first restorer they brought here." Elisa gripped the folder tighter. Did she disappear too? Nora didn't answer. She didn't need to. Before Elisa could press further, the door to the archive creaked open. 2 men entered. Black jackets. Boots wet from rain. The same men she had seen the night police stormed the museum. Nora stood abruptly. "Sorry, we're closing." The tone wasn't closing. It was run. Elisa tucked the folder under her coat and moved toward the back exit, just as the men's eyes locked onto her. "Elisa Navarro," one of them said. Her blood turned to ice. She didn't wait for more. She slipped out through the emergency stairwell, heart hammering. The old folder clutched against her chest. Outside, rain hammered the pavement like nails. Elisa sprinted toward her car, fumbled with the keys. When she reached the door, she froze. Something was drawn across her windshield, smeared with rain. A symbol, the red eye, and beneath it, written in thick permanent marker, 4 words. "You should have left." The rain blurred the ink, but not the message. Elisa stood there, drenched, breath shaking, folder tucked under her coat. Someone didn't just want her gone. Someone had done this before, and the first person to go digging for the truth never came back. The storm rolled in after midnight, not loud, but heavy. Rain tapped against the windows of the B&B like restless fingers. Elisa lay in bed staring at the plaster ceiling, unable to shut down her mind. Every time she blinked, she saw the red eye from a mural burned into her vision. You should have left. The words were still smeared on her windshield. She couldn't forget them. Her bag sat open on the floor. Inside, wrapped in a cloth, was the old archive folder, the one containing Matteo Rinaldi's photograph and the note that called the mural a doorway. Elisa slid out of bed, crouched next to the wooden wardrobe, and pulled at the loose floorboard she had noticed earlier. It lifted with a dry creak. Carefully, she hid the folder inside the hollow space. Not even Ray could find it there. She replaced the plank and exhaled. Safe, or as safe as anything could be in Valmora Bay. 2:41 a.m. A sound woke her. Not the rain. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, coming from the floor below. Elisa's breath froze in her throat. She slipped out of bed and moved silently toward the door. The hallway was dim, lit only by the weak glow of a nightlight. She opened her door a few centimeters. Downstairs, someone was moving through the foyer, the soft thump of boots on old wood, a drawer sliding open, a metallic click. Elisa leaned forward, heartbeat hammering. The silhouette of a man stood behind the reception desk of the B&B, his back to her, shoulders broad, hood up. He wasn't stealing money. He was opening the mail slots, looking for something, or someone. Elisa's pulse surged. He's looking for me. The man stopped suddenly, as if sensing her presence. His head turned. Not enough for her to see his face, but enough for her to know he knew she was there. Elisa stepped back, hands shaking. The man walked swiftly to the front door, unlocked it, and vanished into the storm. Elisa rushed to the window. No car, no engine, nothing. He was simply gone. Morning. The smell of coffee and maple butter filled the dining area downstairs. Lucy, the innkeeper, stood behind the counter, tying her hair up in a messy bun. "You're up early," she said with a smile. Then her expression softened. "You look pale, Elisa. Everything okay?" Elisa hesitated. "Last night, someone was here." Lucy froze. "In the house?" "I saw him. At the mail desk." Lucy slowly put the coffee pot down. "I need to show you something." She opened the small drawer behind the counter and pulled out a folded note. "He left this yesterday afternoon. Said he was a friend of yours." Elisa unfolded it. The paper was blank. Completely blank. "I didn't know if I should give it to you," Lucy said quietly. Elisa held the paper up toward the light. Nothing. Then she rubbed her thumb along the surface. A faint streak of red pigment smeared onto her skin. The same deep, impossible red. Elisa stared at the stain on her fingertip. Her voice came out in a whisper. "He was here for me." Lucy swallowed nervously. "Do you know who he is?" Elisa blinked, eyes cold and clear. "No," she said, "but I'm done running from him." She turned, grabbed her coat, and headed for the door. There was one man in Valmora Bay who always appeared at the exact moment she didn't want him to. Stamp Riley. He knew more than he pretended. Time to make him talk. The harbor bar smelled of diesel, old rope, and wet salt. A rusted fan hummed overhead, slicing the air into choppy fragments. Men in heavy jackets sat hunched over their beers, eyes fixed on the muted television mounted above the counter. Elisa pushed open the door, rain dripping from her coat. Every head turned toward her. Stamp Riley was exactly where she expected him. The last table near the windows, boots kicked up, cigarette burning in a chipped ashtray. He looked like a man waiting for trouble. "Elisa Navarro," he drawled. "You look like hell." "Good," she said. "I'm done looking harmless." Stamp smirked. But when he noticed her hands trembling, the smirk faded. She slid into the seat across from him. The ocean outside banged against the docks, loud and unpredictable. "We need to talk," she said. Stamp exhaled smoke through his nose. "We don't need to do anything." Elisa placed something on the table. The blank paper from the B&B. His eyes widened when he saw the streak of pigment on her fingertip, the same impossible red from a mural. She spoke slowly, evenly. "Someone came into the house last night. Left this. The pigment reacted on contact with my skin. Stamp swallowed hard. I need answers, Elisa said. What is that pigment? And who keeps following me? Stamp closed his eyes, rubbed his forehead, then leaned in so close she could smell the sea on his clothes. That mural wasn't meant to be touched. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Elisa's voice sharpened. Then let's talk about Matteo Rinaldi. Stamp froze. Even the bar went quiet, like the room was holding its breath. Where did you hear that name? He whispered. I found a file, a picture of the mural before someone altered it. Matteo said the mural wasn't symbolic. He said it was a doorway. Elisa blinked. So it's true. Stamp flicked ash into the tray. His jaw was tight, his voice low and raw. He used to come here. Talked about the mural, like it was alive. Said it listened. Said the eye changed when he got closer. What happened to him? Stamp looked away. People in this town don't ask questions they don't want answers to. The evasiveness lit a fuse in her. Stamp, I'm not afraid of a wall. I'm afraid of people. Someone entered the B&B. Someone drew the eye on my windshield. Someone is watching me. Stamp leaned in, voice barely above a whisper, then stopped digging. Elisa felt the words like a slap. I'm not Matteo, she snapped. Stamp's expression twisted. Anger or fear, she couldn't tell. No, you're worse, because you think you're safe. Elisa stood up. You're protecting something, or someone. I'm protecting you, he hissed. The door opened. The temperature in the bar dropped. 2 men stepped inside, black jackets, soaked from rain. The same 2 from the archive, from the museum. Stamp's whole body tensed. They scanned the room, then locked eyes on Elisa. Stamp's voice became stone. Leave. Now. Elisa grabbed her coat, heart racing. She didn't run. She walked out with her chin lifted, refusing to show fear. Outside, Harbor Pier. The storm had picked up. Waves slammed against the breakwater. Elisa inhaled sharply, letting the cold sea air burn her lungs. She knew 2 things. Stamp was terrified, which meant the danger was real. Everyone in this town knew more than she did. She wasn't going home. She wasn't hiding. She stared back toward the bar through the rain-washed window. Stamp was watching her, not with anger, with warning. Stop digging, or you'll end up like Matteo. Elisa turned away and walked into the wind, jaw set. She wasn't going to stop. The librarian's eyes follow Elisa like a shadow. Elisa forces a polite smile and pushes open the wooden door of the small village library, a place that smells of dust, salt, and forgotten stories. The door closes with sharp clack, too loud for such a quiet room. Hello, she called softly. No answer, only the flutter of pages turning somewhere deeper inside. Her pulse is still unsteady from a near chase outside, from the 2 men in dark jackets, from the sense of being cornered even in the open air. She's not sure whether she came here for information or just to hide, but the library feels safe, or at least hidden. Elisa wandered between the tall wooden shelves, most of them leaning at strange angles, filled with books so old the spines are flaking. At the back, near a narrow window overlooking the harbor, she finds a dusty chest with rolled-up maps and yellow charts. She pulls one out, a detailed map of the coast, the village, the roads leading to the cliffs, circles, hand-drawn, around the old fountain, the abandoned cannery, and the Scogliera where Hugo's mural changes. Exactly the same markings she saw in Matteo Rinaldi's documents. Before her mind can process that, a voice breaks the silence. Not many look at those anymore. Elisa jumps. A frail woman stands just behind her. She must be almost 80, her posture slightly bent, her hair white and untamed, her cardigan buttoned wrong. I didn't hear you, Elisa stammers. The old woman's gaze drops to the map in Elisa's hands. Some maps show the past, she says. Some show things that haven't happened yet. Elisa swallows. Do you know anything about the mural on the cliffs? At first, the woman doesn't answer. She simply walks to a nearby drawer and pulls out an old photograph encased in yellowed plastic. She hands it to Elisa. The cliff, the mural. But the image is different than what Elisa has seen. The woman in the mural, The figure emerging from the colors is not the same. Her face is blurred, her hair darker, the posture different. It changes, Elisa whispers. The librarian nods, slowly, always has, since the first disappearance. Elisa freezes. Disappearance? The librarian studies her face, deeply, knowingly, then leans in until Elisa can smell the faint scent of chamomile on her breath. People come here looking for answers, she murmurs, voice barely above a whisper. But this place doesn't give answers. It takes something in return. Elisa's heart stops. What does it take? The woman's gaze lifts, unfocused, as if she's remembering something that doesn't belong to her anymore. Pieces of yourself. A chill runs down Elisa's spine. The librarian suddenly stiffens, as if she has said too much. She takes back the photo, places it in a drawer, and shuts it firmly. Without another word, she turns and disappears between the aisles, leaving Elisa alone with silence and dread. Outside, the wind has turned sharp, blowing salty spray from the harbor. Elisa returns to her car on shaky legs, mind replaying the librarian's words. Pieces of yourself. She pulls the car door open, ready to leave this place, when something catches her eye. A small rectangle wedged under her windshield wiper. A card. She plucks it free. Bold black letters, centered, no handwriting. Stop. No signature. No logo. Nothing. Her blood turns cold. Someone knows exactly where she was. Exactly where she is. Elisa looks up sharply, scanning the street. People walking, loading groceries, going about their lives like nothing is wrong. No one looks suspicious. No one looks at her at all. She gets into the car and locks the doors with trembling hands. Her reflection stares back from the rearview mirror, pale, shaken, but determined. She whispers to herself, "I'm not stopping." Her decision forms with brutal clarity. Tonight, she will go back to the cliffs, to the mural, alone. No more questions. No more running. Whatever that painting wants, whatever it has been trying to tell her, she's ready to hear it. She starts the engine and drives toward the fading light. Chapter 8. The shoreline between worlds. The cliffs waited for her like a hell breath. Elisa left the library with the stop card burning in her pocket, the warning coiled tight around her thoughts. The sky had dimmed to a bruised gray, the kind of color that made the sea look older than it was. She walked without really deciding to, letting her feet take her down the narrow road, leading toward the shoreline. The air tasted of coming rain, and something metallic, like old blood in the wind. She kept seeing the librarian's eyes, too certain, too resigned. Pieces of yourself. But she couldn't turn back now. Every answer she'd uncovered only split into more questions, as if the town were peeling her apart layer by layer, guiding her somewhere she was supposed to reach. Her phone buzzed once, but when she checked, the screen was blank. No notifications, no calls, just a single flicker of static that crawled across the glass before fading. She lowered it slowly. The cliffs rose ahead, jagged teeth against the sky. The path wound downward between slick stones and tufts of grass bent sideways by the wind. At the bottom, the tide was beginning to retreat, revealing stretches of dark sand and rock pools reflecting broken pieces of clouds. The mural lay further along the coast, hidden from the main trail by an outcrop of stone. She hesitated when she reached the divide. Behind her, the town was a cluster of faint lights clinging to the hills. Ahead, only the sea and the ancient wall, where color didn't behave like color. She chose forward. The wind grew harsher as she approached the bend. Her coat slapped against her legs, and once, only once, she thought she heard footsteps behind her. She spun, breath caught in her throat. Nothing, just the wind pushing at the world. Elisa rounded the outcrop. The mural greeted her like an open eye. Even in the failing light, the colors pulsed softly, as if alive beneath the stone surface. Reds bled into blues, purples dissolved into shades she couldn't name. Tonight, the figure in the mural seemed sharper, her posture almost expectant, her blurred face turned slightly toward Elisa. Elisa stood still, pulse drumming. "It wasn't like this yesterday," she whispered. As if an answer, a ripple moved through the pigment, A shift so subtle she would have doubted it entirely if not for the familiar sensation rising in her chest. A tightening, a pull, like the mural was adjusting itself to her presence. Her fingers tingled. She stepped closer, stopping just short of touching the surface. This time she didn't want to. Something inside her understood the price of contact now. The way the world tilted and stole pieces of her memory, like a tide dragging grains of sand. A sudden gust of wind shoved against her shoulder. She stumbled and caught herself on the rock wall, not on the mural, but close enough that warmth radiated through the stone. And then a whisper, not from behind her, not inside her, through her. You saw the room. Elisa gasped and stepped back. The mural remained still, silent, ordinary, yet the echo of the words lingered inside her bones. The room she saw in the vision, the one with canvases that almost breathed, rose in her mind with perfect clarity. She hadn't told anyone about it except Nora, not in detail. Yet the mural knew, or something behind it did. Elisa pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. She looked out to the sea for grounding. The horizon a dark line splitting water from sky. The tide had gone out further, revealing a narrow gully between the rocks, a place usually drowned, now exposed. A faint glint caught her eye. Metal, half buried beneath a mound of wet sand. She walked toward it slowly, each step deliberate. The sound of the waves crashed in uneven rhythms against the cliffs, but here, near the gully, the world felt quieter, like the air was holding its breath again. She crouched and brushed sand aside. A chain, attached to something circular. The metal was cold in her hands, colder than the wind, colder than the winter sea. She tugged lightly, freeing the object. A tag, worn, scratched, letters faint but still visible. Her heart lurched. Rinaldi. The name struck her like a blow. Not Mateo's first name. Not yet. But the surname alone was enough to feel like the ground shifted beneath her. She turned the tag in her fingers, sand clinging to her skin. The metal hummed faintly, though perhaps that was only her pulse roaring in her ears. She looked back at the mural. The blurred figure seemed closer now, as if leaning toward her. No, Elisa whispered. No, that's not possible. But she clutched the tag tighter, unable to let go. Behind her, the wind carried a foreign sound. A scrape, a footstep. She rose quickly, scanning the rocks. Visibility was low, but she could make out the silhouettes of two figures near the bend, tall, dark coats, motionless against the stone. The men from the museum, from the archive, from the bar. Her mouth went dry. She backed away, keeping the mural at her side, the sea to her left. One of the men stepped forward. The other stayed where he was, blocking the path back to town. Not now, Elisa whispered to herself. Not here. Her eyes darted toward a narrow trail leading upward, a steep, uneven scramble car by runoff, not meant for walking. But it connected to a secondary route toward the harbor. Dangerous, but possible. The men advanced. Elisa ran. Her shoes slipped on wet stone as she grabbed at jagged holds, pulling herself up the incline. Pebbles skittered downward as the wind howled around her. She didn't dare look back, but she heard them following, one closer than the other, boots crunching against the rock. Halfway up, her foot slid. She caught herself with one hand, the other closing instinctively around a tag in her pocket. A flash of warmth sparked through her palm, a pulse that seemed to reverberate through the cliffs. She didn't stop. She climbed harder, faster. By the time she reached the top of the slope, her lungs burned and her hands trembled violently. The path ahead was barely visible, only a thin strip of earth between bramble bushes and a low fence leading toward the outer ridge of the harbor. But she kept running, fueled by adrenaline and the growing certainty that the town's secrets were no longer willing to stay buried. When she reached the edge of the ridge, she risked a glance back. The men had stopped below, their faces unreadable in the fading light. They didn't shout. They didn't chase further. They simply watched her, the way one watches a flame to see if it will spread. Elisa staggered backward until her legs met the wooden rail. The tag seemed to pulse faintly against her skin again, as if guiding her away, urging her to keep moving. She turned toward the distant lights of the harbor. She needed shelter, a place to think. Someone who wasn't lying to her. Nora. The thought came with clarity sharp enough to cut. Elisa tucked the tag securely into her coat and started toward the harbor path, her breath unsteady but resolute. Behind her, the cliffs vanished into darkness, and the mural, unseen now, waited with its shifting colors. The men remained until she disappeared from sight. Only then did they turn back toward the mural, and the wind, rising once more, carried a whisper Elisa could no longer hear. She's chosen. Chapter 9. Shelter above the harbor. Nora's flat smelled of tea and sea salt. It was small. 2 rooms above the harbor bar, a scatter of potted plants on the windowsill, and maps tacked to walls like a private weather forecast. A single lamp burned in the corner, throwing the room into soft, forgiving light. Elisa sat on the threadbare sofa, legs tucked beneath her, while Nora moved about with calm, efficient gestures. The barista's hands were sure. She wrapped a clean strip of cloth around Elisa's hand where the scrape had reddened. There, Nora said, knotting the bandage with a practiced tug. That'll stop the bleeding. Best not to pick at it. Elisa watched, oddly comforted by the domesticity of the motion. The scrape on her palm throbbed where she dug at the soil for Mateo's dog tag. The metal itself sat heavy in her coat pocket, like proof that the past still had weight. "Thank you," Elisa said. She looked up, searching Nora's face in the lamplight. There was a steady resilience there, someone who had been hurt by the sea and chosen to stay. Nora poured hot tea into 2 mugs and handed one over. The cup warmed Elisa's fingers, and the steam fogged the air between them. "You shouldn't have gone back alone," Nora said softly. "Cliffs at dawn are not for dawdlers." "I could not go." Elisa wrapped both hands around the mug. "I found Mateo's dog tag. I thought I might finally understand." Nora's jaw tightened. For a moment, she stared out toward the window, as if she could see the cliffs through the rain-dark glass. "Mateo Rinaldi," she said finally. The name slid out like a stone into still water. "It's been years. Folks don't bring him up much. Not here." Elisa swallowed. "What do you know?" Nora set her own mug down and sank onto the armchair opposite. "More than I used to. Less than I want to. My brother worked the trawlers before he disappeared. He was a big man. Hard to miss. He knew everyone who took work on the cliffs, and who preferred to leave well enough alone." She rubbed her thumb along the rim of the mug, thinking. Mateo came through in the 80s. He was an artist, came from the city, kept to himself mostly, did odd jobs, painted murals, fixed things. And then, Nora's eyes went distant. Then he stayed too long with that wall. Said it spoke to him. Said it wanted something. People said he got obsessed. I don't know the full story. Some of that sort of thing was hushed up. But if you found his dog tag on the cliff, then he was closer to the truth than most of us would admit. Elisa looked down at her tea, at the tiny tremor in her hands that never quite left. "I keep seeing things when I touch the paint. Images. A room with canvases that look like mirrors. A voice that says, 'You chose this.'" Nora did not laugh. She only nodded. "That's what they say," she murmured. "The wall replies in pieces. It takes a part of you and gives you something back until you can't tell where you end and it begins." Elisa wanted to argue. She wanted to call it superstition or sleep deprivation or some chemical reaction in the pigment. But Nora had the look of someone who had learned to accept the town's private language. The words that didn't translate to outsiders but were shouted quietly at kitchen tables. On the wall behind Nora's sofa, there was a picture frame hanging askew. Elisa hadn't noticed it at first. An old black and white photograph of the Abbey on the cliff, taken from the sea. The Abbey silhouette was solemn, its tower more intact than she remembered seeing in current photographs. A small group of people stood at the cliff edge in the old photo, but the faces were blurred by time. Elisa stood and walked closer. Something in the background of the picture snagged at her memory, the shape of a ladder or scaffolding, or perhaps a wooden crate. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Nora glanced toward the frame, then away as if the picture carried its own weight. "Found in a box at the back of my father's things. He worked at the museum before it closed to outsiders. Kept old papers and photos. Most folks think the Abbey was always the Abbey. They don't remember who came to paint it or who signed the ledger. Elisa's pulse thudded. A ledger? Nora fetched a battered notebook from beneath the coffee table and opened it. The pages were filled with notes in a careful hand. Names, dates, the muffled scrawl of attendance at volunteer days, the names of donors. Tucked between 2 pages was a thin strip of paper, yellow, targeted with thumbprints. You said there was a list tied to Mateo. Elisa said. Nora hesitated, then slid the strip across the table. Elisa unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was cramped, hurried. Several names recorded, a date, and then, in a different hand in darker ink, a short line crossed out and rewritten. The name Matteo Rinaldi appeared plainly, with a year beside it. Other names were smudged, some crossed entirely. My father kept a ledger because the museum asked him to, Nora said. Then the museum closed the public wing. Files got boxed up. People forgot about the names in the boxes, except those who didn't want to. Elisa traced a fingertip over Matteo's name. Why would someone hide this? Nora's mouth flattened. Because some things carry trouble. Because when people start poking around, old pacts and quiet agreements get messy. Someone decided it was better to tuck that into a drawer. Elisa's voice trembled at the edges. Who? Nora looked at her with a hardness she hadn't shown before. The same people who make sure the museum gets the money it needs. The same people who are very good at not being asked questions. She paused. But I don't want to frighten you. I want to help. Elisa blinked. Why me? Nora shrugged and gave a small, rueful smile. Because you remind me of someone I used to meet on the pier. Stubborn like him. Because you don't scare easily. Because sometimes the people left in this town, those of us who remain, need someone who remembers how to push. They sat in the quiet for a moment, the rain ticking against the window, the harbor lights a soft blur through the mist. Finally, Nora rose and walked to a small chest of drawers. She rifled through it and produced a small folded map, edges frayed. The ink faded in places where the paper had been creased 100 times. This belonged to my brother, she said. He marked places he wanted to avoid and places he thought worth watching. See those crosses? He circled the Abbey once, the museum twice. Said there were seams in the town, places where the past and the present pinched together. Elisa leaned over the map. The Abbey sat on the same promontory as the chapel with the mural. A thin dotted line led from the museum to a cave on the shoreline, one she'd only seen on the tide charts. You believe me? Elisa asked. Nora looked at her steadily, the chair creaking as she sat again. I believe that this town is full of people who keep secrets. I believe that the sea keeps them, too. And I believe there are things, paint, names, iron tags, that won't let themselves be forgotten. Elisa closed her eyes for a second, thinking of the jolt she felt against the painted surface, of the scent of old pigment and salt, of the voice that had said, You chose this. The dog tag had felt like a bell pulled from the past, and now, in Nora's flat, under the hum of the lamp, that bell rang louder. Nora stood and moved to the window, hands cupped around the glass. Outside, the harbor lay gray and obedient, boats tied to their moorings. She didn't look at Elisa when she spoke. In Valmora Bay, nothing arrives purely by accident, Nora said. Her voice was small but firm. People come here for reasons. The sea remembers. The town remembers. And sometimes it offers a hand to those who are willing to hold on. Elisa met Nora's gaze and saw in it a promise. A quiet, fierce pledge of company rather than solitude. I'm not giving up, Elisa whispered. Nora's mouth softened. Good. Then we start properly tomorrow. I'll take you to the places that don't show up on the tourist maps. But for now, get some sleep. You look like the sea dragged you through a net. Elisa let herself relax for the first time in days. For the first time since London, someone had taken measure of her and chosen to stay. The harbor lights blinked low, and outside the wind kept on talking to the cliff. Inside Nora's apartment, the room felt like a small, defiant harbor against a vast, indifferent ocean. The hallway of Nora Penrose's bed and breakfast groaned under Elisa's steps, every plank shifting with age and salt from the sea breeze. The air carried the steady scent of damp wood and storm water, mixed with something faintly metallic. From the kitchen downstairs, the aroma of black tea with milk drifted upwards. Elisa's clothes were still damp from the downpour that had caught her on the cliffs. Cornwall's weather didn't forgive strangers. Second room on the left. Nora had said earlier, handing her a brass key. Then a pause, too brief to be casual. And stay away from the one at the end of the corridor. It's unsafe. Strange. All the doors had numbers. Except that one. Elisa inserted her key into her room. The lock turned reluctantly. Inside, the room was small but cozy. A single bed with a faded quilt, a dresser that had seen better decades, a lamp with a cream-colored shade. The wooden window frame rattled when wind pushed against it. She set her luggage on the floor. The floorboards trembled lightly beneath her feet. Old house, old foundations, she told herself. Then, tap, tap, she froze. The sound came from the end of the corridor. Probably nothing. Old houses made noises, especially one sitting this close to the sea. Tap, tap, not random, not wind. Curiosity pulled her back out into the hallway. The light overhead flickered, buzzing weakly. The unnumbered door. No keyhole, no markings. A door that looked more forgotten than closed. Elisa stepped closer. The handle was cold, colder than metal should be. A soft sound pushed through the wood, like breathing, just as her fingers brushed the handle. Don't. Elisa spun around. Nora stood at the opposite end of the hallway. She hadn't heard her come up the stairs. Her expression was empty, emotionless. Don't open that door, she whispered. Why? Is there someone inside? Nora's gaze didn't move from the door. She seemed almost afraid to look at Elisa. That room shouldn't be there. Elisa blinked. What does that mean? It isn't on the floor plan. A thin tremor slipped into her voice. And it wasn't here when I bought the house. Elisa felt her throat tighten. Then what's behind it? Nora's answer was barely a breath. The house remembers what people try to forget. A beat. And sometimes it gives things back. She reached out and grabbed Elisa's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Promise me you won't touch that door. Elisa nodded. Nora let go, too reluctantly, and descended the stairs, disappearing into darkness as if swallowed by the house itself. Silence. Tap. The door's handle turned on its own. The handle stopped moving. Silence returned, heavy, expectant. Elisa swallowed hard. She should go back to her room. Shut the door. Pretend she didn't hear anything. Pretend this was just an old house settling in the storm. But something about that door pulled at her. She moved closer. Her palm hovered just above the handle. But she didn't touch it. Instead, she leaned forward, inspecting the edges of the frame. Old paint had cracked along the joinery, and time had warped the wood just enough to leave a thin vertical gap. A crack, barely wide enough to look through. Her heart beat too fast, thudding inside her chest. This is stupid, she thought. Absolutely stupid. She bent her head, bringing her right eye toward the slit of darkness. At first, she saw nothing, just blackness. Then something shifted inside, not a figure, not a shape, but movement, like a shadow turning toward her. Elisa. She jerked back, slamming into the wall behind her. It hadn't been a whisper. It hadn't been a memory. Someone inside the room had spoken her name, and the voice was familiar. Her breath turned to ice in her lungs. She stared at the crack again, pulse hammering. She forced herself to look. This time she saw a canvas propped against the far wall. Her painting, the one from London, the ruin that had cost her everything, the one she had thrown away. The room swallowed her shock, feeding on it. No, she whispered. That's impossible. She reached toward the door, not thinking, not breathing, when footsteps echoed behind her. Elisa! It was Nora, but her voice wasn't stern this time. It trembled. Nora rushed forward and grabbed Elisa's wrist, pulling her back from the door as if touching it would burn her. I told you not to look. That's my painting. Elisa gasped. The one eye. You don't understand. Nora's voice cracked. The house doesn't collect objects. It collects pain. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the entire hallway in white light. For a split second, Elisa saw a figure standing behind the canvas on the other side of the door, the outline of a man, watching her. When darkness returned, the figure was gone, but Elisa couldn't unsee it. She pulled her hand free from Nora's grasp. "I need answers," Elisa said, her voice thin but resolute. "I'm not leaving this house until I know what's happening." Nora closed her eyes, not in defeat, but like someone who knew this moment was inevitable. "Then we start tomorrow," she whispered. "At the cliffs, at low tide." The house groaned, as if listening, and from behind the sealed door, something scratched the wood in reply. Chapter 10. The Mark in the Stone. The morning arrived gray and mute, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. Elisa barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the door upstairs and the canvas waiting behind it, her canvas, along with the outline of a man that shouldn't exist. When she went downstairs, she found Nora already awake, standing stiffly by the kettle. Her movements were mechanical, like someone running on memory rather than intention. "Morning," Elisa murmured. Nora didn't answer. She just slid a mug across the counter. Black tea, milk, no sugar, exactly how Elisa took it, although she had never said so. That detail tightened something in her chest. "We go at low tide," Nora whispered. "If we wait any longer, the tunnel will flood." "Tunnels," Elisa forced a breath. "Right." Nora finally looked up at her. "This isn't about the tunnel," she said. "It's about what way to the end of it." She handed Elisa a rain jacket and an old lantern. "Stay close. And whatever you do, don't look directly at the water." Elisa didn't ask why. She didn't want to know the answer. They walked through Valmora Bay in silence. The village felt different in daylight. Not safer, just exposed. Locals paused when Elisa passed, staring with an expression that was neither curiosity nor welcome, more like recognition. Old men outside the harbor pub stopped mid-conversation, their eyes following her, as if they'd been warned she was coming. They reached the cliffs. From up here, the sea looked like a creature breathing, pulling back, then lunging against the shore. The wind snapped at Elisa's hood, trying to peel it back. Nora pointed to a narrow path winding downward between two jagged walls of rock. "Careful. The ground here doesn't like to hold people." "Doesn't like to?" Nora didn't repeat herself. They descended. The ocean sucked itself away from the base of the cliff, revealing slick sand and dark openings where the water usually churned. A cave mouth yawned before them, tall, arched, and impossible to miss. But something was wrong. Elisa frowned. "I swear that entrance wasn't visible from above." "It never is," Nora said. "The sea hides what shouldn't be found." They slipped inside. The cave swallowed sound. Their footsteps echoed against wet stone walls. Salt dripped from the ceiling in slow tears. The lantern cast a trembling circle of light, revealing symbols carved into the rock. Spirals, intersecting lines, crude human figures with no eyes. Elisa slowed. "Nora, what is this place?" "Older than the village," Nora said. "Older than the abbey. Some say it was a sanctuary. Others say a prison." They reached a chamber wider than the others, domed and resonant. The walls glistened like they were sweating. Elisa's lantern illuminated a massive stone panel, 6 feet tall, carved directly into the wall. Her breath left her body. It was a woman, not a symbol, not a representation. A portrait carved in impossible detail. Hair flowing behind her, eyes turned upward towards something unseen. But the face. "Elisa," Nora whispered. "Don't." Elisa reached out, fingertips just grazing the stone. The carved face was hers. Her exact face. Same jawline, same mouth, same scar from childhood above her left eyebrow. Her pulse pounded in her throat. Below the carving, a single line was etched into the rock. "She remembers what should be forgotten." Elisa staggered back. "What does that mean? Why is my face here?" Nora's voice cracked. "Because you've been here before." Elisa stared at her. "That's impossible." Nora shook her head. "In this village, memory doesn't always start where you think it does." Before Elisa could speak, the sound of water rushing echoed behind them. Fast, violent, unnatural. The tide was coming back. But it wasn't rising from the sea entrance. It was rushing from inside the cave, from a place deeper than any map showed. "Elisa," Nora whispered, her voice trembling. "Run." The lantern flickered, went out, and in the darkness, Elisa heard whispering. Dozens of voices layered together, all speaking the same word. "Remember." The cave filled with the roar of rushing water. Elisa grabbed Nora's hand, their lantern useless in the suffocating darkness. The tide wasn't simply returning. It was racing inland, surging from deeper tunnels like a pulse from the earth itself. And it wasn't salt water. It was black. "Come on," Nora shouted, pulling Elisa toward a narrow opening in the wall. Their shoes slipped on wet stone, shoulders scraping rock as they squeezed through the jagged passage. The walls pressed in, forcing them sideways. The water followed, fast. "Elisa, don't look back," Nora warned. Elisa looked anyway. The water didn't behave like water. It rose in vertical shapes, like hands stretching out a liquid grave. She choked on a breath. The voices followed. "Remember, remember, remember." They weren't echoes. They spoke inside her skull. They stumbled into a smaller cavern, barely lit by a weak shaft of sunlight filtering through a crack in the ceiling. A narrow ledge hugged the wall. Below, the black water churned. "Elisa, this way." Nora pointed to a tunnel on the opposite side. Wooden beams supported it, darkened and cracked by age. Remnants of old smuggling operations. Maybe water pooled at their feet, swallowing the floor in cold increments. Elisa stopped. Something shiny poked out of the sand patch. A metal object, rectangular, with edges she recognized instinctively. She bent down and brushed the sand away. A photo frame, water-damaged and warped. Behind the cracked glass was a photograph. Elisa, standing in front of the cliffs of Valmora Bay, smiling, with someone next to her, a man, his arm around her waist. His face had been scratched out. "What is this?" she whispered, voice trembling. "I've never—" "Yes," Nora said quietly. "You have—" Elisa looked up sharply. Nora's expression was soft and broken. "You came here a year ago, in the middle of a storm." Her voice wavered. "You weren't alone." Elisa's heart dropped so violently she felt dizzy. "I would remember that." "You tried to—" Nora looked toward the water, as if afraid it could hear her. "But this place, it takes memories soaked in grief. It buries them. It feeds on them." The voices rose again from the water. "Elisa, Elisa," her name, spoken with devotion, longing, pain. A man's voice, the same voice from behind the door in the B&B. She backed away from the ledge, stumbling over her own feet. "Who is he?" she whispered. The lantern flickered wildly, though no flame remained. And then she saw it, her reflection in the black water. But there was another silhouette beside her, tall, male, only inches from her shoulder. "Elisa," the voice said softly, not threatening, devastated. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I don't know you," she whispered. The water pulsed. "But I know you." Nora's hand clamped around her wrist. "We need to leave. Now." "No," Elisa said, voice barely air. "I need to know." "Elisa," Nora's tone sharpened. "If you keep listening, the water will take everything else." As if an answer, the water surged upward, licking the ledge with black tendrils. Vapor curled into letters on the stone wall. "You remembered the wrong moment." Elisa's breath shattered. Memories weren't missing. They were misplaced. She grabbed a rusted iron ring bolted to the wall, the beginning of an old wooden walkway, and ran. Nora followed, lantern swinging, boots hitting wood with frantic rhythm. Behind them, the darkness rose like a tide determined to rewrite their past. Chapter 11. The Ledger of Lost Names. The wooden walkway groaned beneath their weight as Elisa and Nora sprinted deeper into the tunnel. Every few meters, a support beam had splintered from moisture, threatening to collapse. The lantern swung wildly in Nora's hand, creating jagged shadows along the stone. Behind them, the black water chased, no longer fluid, but moving in sharp jerks, like something walking rather than flowing. Elisa didn't dare look back. "Nora!" she gasped, breath tearing at her lungs. Where does this lead? To the old abbey. Nora shouted. There's a hatch beneath the archive room. If we can get to it. A beam cracked overhead. Crack, crash. Elisa ducked just in time as a chunk of ceiling rock slammed onto the boards, splitting them. Cold water sprayed upward in violent spits. She skidded to a stop. A gap, nearly a meter long. No planks left. The walkway was severed. If we jump, we can make it. Nora yelled. That's insane. Behind them, a whisper curled to the tunnel like smoke. Elisa, the water surged forward. Fine, Elisa hissed. She backed up, took 3 steps, and leapt. For half a second she was weightless, suspended above darkness. Then her boots slammed onto the other side. She stumbled but remained upright. Nora jumped after her, landing hard. Her lantern clattered onto the planks, but miraculously stayed lit. They ran again, breath burning. The tunnel finally widened into a chamber. At the center sat an old wooden table surrounded by shelves, half rotten and covered in algae. Papers and journals lay scattered across it, their ink blurred but legible. Ledgers. Dozens of them. Nora froze, her face drained of color. This is where they kept the records, she whispered. The monks. The ones who lived here centuries ago. Elisa looked at the books. The covers were blackened with mold, but titles scratched into the leather were unmistakable. Register of Remembered Souls, Volume 7. Violent Grief, Volume 8. Returned. Elisa's stomach turned. These are names of people who were forgotten, people who wanted to forget, Nora corrected, her voice barely audible, or someone who wanted to erase them. Elisa opened the nearest ledger. The pages crackled. Rows of handwritten notes filled the parchment. Name, date of arrival, what memory was surrendered. Near the bottom of the page, ink smeared but still readable. Navarro, Elisa memory surrendered. Final night / loss of. The last word was water-stained and illegible. Elisa's heart stuttered. That's my name. Nora stayed silent, watching her. Elisa flipped the page. More entries. More losses. Her finger traced further until she found the last recorded line. Rinaldi Matthew. Elisa froze. Matthew Rinaldi. Her breath hitched. A name she hadn't heard before, but her body reacted as if shocked by electricity. Under his name, in a darker ink, memory surrendered. Death. She stepped back on the ledger as if burned. This is him, she whispered. The man from the photo. The voice. The presence. Elisa, listen to me. Nora took a step forward. Once a name is written in these ledgers, the memory is no longer yours. The house keeps it. The sea amplifies it. Elisa Navarro. The whispers rose, echoing around them. The water flooded into the chamber, swirling around the stone like eager hands. Nora grabbed Elisa's arm. We need to go. But Elisa wasn't looking at Nora anymore. She was staring at the ledger, at the 2 names, side by side, like they had arrived together. Matthew Rinaldi, she whispered. Her throat tightened. The syllables broke something open inside her chest. A memory surfaced, not clear, but sharp. Rain. Stone steps. A man's hand slipping from hers. Elisa. Nora dragged her away from the table. The water lunged, swallowing the ledger whole. But Elisa had already read enough. She knew now. She hadn't come to Valmora Bay by chance. She hadn't been running from humiliation in London. She had been running from grief. Deadly grief. And Matthew had died here. But the sea hadn't finished with him. They reached a rusted iron ladder leading up toward light. Elisa climbed. Elisa grabbed the rungs and ascended, Nora right behind her. The hatch above them gave way, opening into the underside of a building. They climbed out into the cold, dusty air of the Abbey Museum's archive room. Elisa collapsed to the floor. I remember him, she whispered, voice cracking. I loved him. The water below whispered in triumph. Nora flinched. Elisa, the house knows. And now, he knows you remember. Chapter 12. The archive that breathes. Dust swirled in the beam of weak daylight slanting through the high windows of the Abbey archive. The air smelled like parchment, mildew, and old stone, a stark contrast to the suffocating humidity of the tunnels below. Elisa lay on the cold floorboards, chest heaving, palms stinging from the climb. Her hair was soaked, strands plastered to her cheeks. Nora shut the hatch behind them. The echo of metal against stone rang like a bell. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Elisa wrapped her arms around her knees, staring at the floor as if afraid to lift her head. "I loved him," she whispered, the words tasting like rust. "I loved Matthew." Nora knelt beside her, gently placing a folded blanket around her shoulders. "I'm sorry you had to remember this way." Elisa gave a small, bitter laugh. "You knew." Nora hesitated. Not denial, hesitation. "I knew someone was missing from your memories," she murmured. "I didn't know his name until we saw the ledger. That book has been sealed for years." Elisa lifted her gaze. "Why would I want to forget him?" Nora swallowed, choosing her words with care. "Elisa, when you arrived last year, you weren't the woman you are now." Elisa blinked. "You told me I'd never been here." "I lied," Nora admitted, "because you begged me to." The words sliced through Elisa like ice. "Last time you came," Nora continued, "you said you could still hear him, that he was drowning and calling your name. You were broken." Elisa's voice trembled. "How did he die?" Nora looked away. "That's not my story to tell." Before Elisa could press further, a sound echoed through the archive. Shh. Pages turning. But no one was touching the books. Elisa and Nora froze as every ledger on the long wooden table opened at once, pages fluttering like wings. A gust of icy wind swept through the room. One book snapped shut, then slid off the table. It skidded across the floor until it stopped at Elisa's feet. The cover read, "Ledger 9 returned." Elisa stared at it, her throat dry. "Nora, what does return mean?" Nora backed away. She looked afraid, truly afraid. "It means a memory or a person has come back." Elisa reached for the ledger. The moment her fingers touched the cover, every candle in the room extinguished. Darkness swallowed them whole. "Elisa," a voice said, right behind her. A man's voice, warm, familiar. Her blood turned to ice. She knew that tone. She had heard it before in 100 lost dreams. "Elisa, please, don't be afraid." She spun around. Nothing there, but the air behind her shifted, as though someone had stepped closer. A breath grazed her ear. "I never wanted to leave you." Her heart stuttered. "Nora," Elisa whispered, voice cracking. "He's here." Nora lunged forward, grabbing Elisa's wrist. "Elisa, listen to me." Her voice was sharp with panic. "Whatever you hear, whatever you think you remember, do not speak to it." Elisa's lips parted. "But he—" Nora shook her head violently. "That voice isn't him. The house uses what you love most to pull you back." Elisa jerked her arm free. "It said my name. It knows me. It knows your grief," Nora hissed. "That's not the same as knowing you." The ledger flipped open on its own, pages tearing as they flapped in unnatural wind. A name surfaced in dark ink, letters bleeding across the page as if freshly written. "Rinaldi Matthew, status, returned." Lightning flashed outside the stained glass windows. Her heart pounded like a drum. "Elisa," the voice whispered closer now, as close as breath. "Let me back in." Every candle in the archive lit again in the same instant. Elisa screamed. A shadow stood next to her. Tall, male, silhouette only, but unmistakably human. Nora grabbed Elisa and pulled her back toward the exit. "Elisa, run." The shadow didn't follow. It only whispered, "You promised you wouldn't forget me." The Abbey's main hall was cold enough to bite skin. Rain hammered the stained glass windows, casting fractured colors across the stone floor. Wind moved to the collapsed roof, making the rafters sigh like an old creature in pain. Elisa's steps echoed as she entered the central nave. Nora followed, closing the heavy door behind them. For a moment, it was silent. Then Elisa turned. "I want the truth," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. All of it. Nora didn't hesitate this time. "You came here with Matthew," she said. "Last winter." The name hit Elisa like a punch to the ribs. Matthew. Elisa shook her head, voice trembling. I don't remember ever being here before. Because you asked the house to take that memory, Nora whispered. And it did. Elisa's breath stilled in her lungs. Nora continued. He came here to forget something. Something that was destroying him. But the ritual, it requires balance. To take a memory, the house demands another one to replace it. What does that mean? Elisa's voice cracked. Replace it with what? A sacrifice, Nora said softly. Pain equal to the pain offered. Elisa felt dizzy. Nora, what did I sacrifice? Nora's eyes filled with sorrow. You asked the house to take him. Elisa staggered back, nearly losing her footing. No, she whispered. I would never. You begged, Nora said. You were on your knees, screaming that you couldn't live with the memory of watching him die. Elisa clutched the edge of a broken pew to stay upright. The air shifted. Images flickered in her mind, not memories, but flashes. Matthew's hand slipping from hers, ocean spray hitting her face, a scream swallowed by wind. Elisa pressed her palms to her temples. No, stop. Elisa. Nora stepped closer. There's more. Elisa looked up, tears blurring her vision. You didn't want only the memory of his death gone, Nora whispered. You wanted the memory of his existence gone. Her voice broke. You asked the house to erase your love. Elisa's knees buckled. She sat heavily on a pew, breast shattering. I loved him, she murmured. I can feel it. Why would I erase that? Because grief can be more violent than love, Nora said. And you were drowning. Elisa lifted her head, eyes fierce with pain. So what's the shadow in the archive? The voice in the water? If Matthew is gone, then what is that? Nora hesitated, then spoke the words Elisa feared most. Not all things that return are human. Elisa's blood ran cold. Before she could respond, something slid across the floor. A piece of torn parchment, carried by wind. No, carried by intention. Elisa picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a ripped page from the ledger. A single line stared back at her. Grief always wants company. A sound echoed through the abbey. Footsteps, slow, even, coming from the back of the hall. Nora grabbed Elisa's arm. Elisa, we're leaving. Now. But Elisa remained frozen, because the voice that followed was not cold or monstrous. It was warm, gentle, exactly as she remembered it from a place she wasn't supposed to remember. Elisa, he said, and a silhouette appeared at the far end of the abbey. Tall, male, waiting. The silhouette stood perfectly still. Rain streaked down the fractured stained glass windows behind him, painting his outline in red and blue like a fractured halo. The air shifted in the abbey, colder, denser, as if the building itself recognized him. Elisa, he said again. The voice slid under her ribs like a memory, finding its way back home. Her throat tightened. Matthew, Nora stepped in front of her, blocking the view. That is not him, she hissed. Whatever you see, whatever you feel, it's built from what the house took. Elisa barely heard her. Her eyes were locked on the shadow. He began to walk toward them. Slow, measured steps that echoed along the nave as if the stone remembered him. Every instinct in Elisa's body screamed to run. But her heart leaned forward. Nora, Elisa whispered. Move? No. Nora. He died. Elisa. You saw it. The sea dragged him under. Nora's voice trembled. You begged the house to take that memory so you could keep breathing. The shadow stopped 6 pews away, close enough that she could see broad shoulders, wet hair plastered to his forehead, not close enough to see his face. Elisa, he said gently, don't be afraid. I'm not afraid, she whispered. You should be. Nora snapped. The shadow tilted his head, the way a person might when confused or hurt. Elisa, he said again, softer now. You promised you wouldn't leave me. She flinched, the exact words she had heard in her nightmares. Memories fractured and bled through her mind. Storm waves swallowing a scream his hand slipping out of hers. Elisa, he said, voice trembling, please come here. She took a step forward without realizing she'd moved. Nora gripped her arm. Elisa, look at me. Her voice cracked. Grief lies. Elisa's breath caught. The shadow began to change. Edges blurring. Movement distorting. As if it struggled to hold shape. Elisa, it said, and there was pain in the voice. Loneliness. Desperation. Her heart broke. Matthew, I'm sorry, Elisa whispered, tears falling. If I'd remembered, I wouldn't have left you. The shadow straightened, then smiled, not lovingly, hungrily. Nora inhaled sharply. She finally saw what Elisa had missed. Elisa, she said slowly, voice barely more than a breath. That thing doesn't want closure. It wants company. The candles along the nave went out, one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness swallowed them. The silhouette rushed forward, impossibly fast, as if dragged by the force of her confession. Elisa! Nora shoved her aside. The shadow passed through space where Elisa had stood, slamming into a pew with a force that splintered wood into fragments. Elisa hit the ground. Dust filled her lungs. When she looked up, the shape hovered inches above the floor, suspended, weightless. It was no longer human. A hollow reflection, built from absence and longing. Elisa, it whispered, don't make me be alone. That voice was filled with the ache of every moment she tried to erase. Nora grabbed Elisa's face between her palms, forcing eye contact. You don't defeat grief by feeding it, she whispered. You defeat it by facing it. A crack of thunder shook the abbey. The shadow recoiled, screaming, not from pain but from rage. It lunged again. Elisa, run! Elisa turned and sprinted toward the side exit of the abbey, the door that led into the storm. Behind her, the shadow roared, shaking the pews. Elisa, come back! She didn't look back. She didn't stop. She chose the storm. Chapter 13. The Room of Returned Memories. Elisa ran. Rain hammered down on Valmora Bay with a violence that felt personal, as if the sky had decided to empty all its grief onto her shoulders. Water splashed under her shoes, soaking the hem of her jeans as she sprinted across the narrow street, heart slamming against her ribs. But something was wrong. The village, usually alive with the scent of sea salt and distant music from the docks, was utterly silent. Shutters closed, curtains drawn, lights off, like a whole town holding its breath. She felt it behind her, that presence, not footsteps, not a shadow cast by a street lamp, but awareness, following her like a memory that refused to let go. Elisa! Nora's voice reached her from the B&B porch, hair soaked and dress clinging to her skin. Come inside, please. You can't wander outside tonight, not with him around. Him. Elisa didn't ask who. She didn't need to. She brushed past Nora and rushed inside. The door slammed as if pushed by the wind, or by something that didn't want her to leave again. The house exhaled. Nora grabbed her wrist. Her fingers trembled. Elisa, listen to me. The house listens to desire. That's how memories disappear. That's how they come back. Elisa pulled her hand free. No more riddles, no more metaphors. I want the truth. Her voice cracked. She didn't care. Nora swallowed hard, gaze flicking upstairs to the forbidden door. That room, she struggled to speak, almost choking on the words. It's not meant to be opened, not unless you are ready to face what the house gives back. Elisa stiffened. I am ready. For the first time, Nora looked afraid. Elisa, please. You don't know what you asked the house to forget. I do, Elisa whispered. I asked it to forget Matthew. Lightning slashed the sky. The lights flickered. Nora's voice was no more than a breath. And what if he didn't want to be forgotten? A chill ran down Elisa's spine. But she climbed the stairs. Each step groaned under her weight. The hallway stretched longer than she remembered, like the house was distorting itself, either pushing her away or guiding her forward. The air thickened, the silence humming like static electricity. The door was waiting. The same door Nora always kept locked. Now it stood slightly open. Elisa swallowed, pushed it wider, and stepped inside. There was no furniture, no dust, no smell of old wood. Only objects suspended in the air, weightless, as if gravity had given up. Polaroids, postcards, dried flowers, journals, sketches, memories. Hundreds of them, thousands, all of them stolen by the house. At the center, illuminated by a skylight that shouldn't have existed, stood an easel, her easel, the unfinished canvas she had abandoned in London. The painting she believed she had ruined stood perfect and intact, her breath caught. The painting showed her and Matthew on the cliff of Valmora Bay, laughing, wind whipping their hair, sunlight on their faces. That moment, right before everything shattered, she reached out, fingertips hovering over the canvas. Her voice trembled. "I didn't paint this." A whisper rolled through the room, like wind through a cave. "You did." Elisa froze. Not a voice, not sound, memory. Then she saw him, reflected in the surface of the canvas, not standing behind her in the room, but existing only inside the painting. Matthew, or the shadow of Matthew, not dead, not alive, frozen in the moment where memory kept him. His voice was soft, low, almost pleading. "You asked the house to forget me." Elisa's knees softened. "I was drowning," she whispered. "I couldn't breathe without you." He tilted his head, eyes full of something that felt like sorrow and longing intertwined. "Then breathe with me again." Elisa pressed her palm against the painting. The texture rippled under her skin like water. Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked. Every object in the room, every stolen memory, began to tremble and orbit around the canvas, as though pulled by the same force that had stolen them in the first place. Matthew's reflection leaned closer. "You asked the house to forget me. Now ask it to remember." Her heartbeat was a drum inside her chest. "Elisa!" Nora appeared at the doorway, voice breaking. "Don't touch the canvas." Elisa turned toward her, wet hair clinging to her face, eyes wide. "I need to know what really happened." She pressed both hands against the painting, and the canvas swallowed her whole. Elisa didn't hear the footsteps at first. She was too busy wiping the rain from her face as she unlocked the side entrance of the Penrose Gallery. Nora had given her the spare key that morning, whispering, "If anything in town feels off, come here. The gallery is safe." Elisa wasn't sure she believed that, but it was better than going back to the lifeless cottage with creaking pipes and shadows that seemed to breathe. Inside, the gallery smelled of turpentine and old wood. Paintings leaned everywhere. Unfinished canvases, frames stacked against the walls, sketches pinned with tacks. She set her bag down and exhaled. Finally, silence, until the silence shifted. A faint click echoed from the front door. Someone else was inside. Elisa froze, her pulse ricocheting in her throat. She reached for her phone. No signal. Why was there never signal inside Valmora Bay's buildings? "Nora?" she called, trying to sound steady. No answer. She moved slowly through the shadowed gallery, passing a half-finished marine landscape. The brush strokes were bold and angry, as though someone had attacked the canvas rather than painted it. Another click. Footsteps. Not Nora. Elisa ducked behind a stack of large frames, crouching low. The footsteps were steady, confident. Whoever was searching wasn't lost. They knew the layout. A man's voice rang out, deep and sharp. "Miss Navarro, we need to talk." Her stomach turned. She recognized that voice. The man from the Scogliera, the one who watched her the night she first touched the mural. Elisa didn't move. She barely breathed. "Stop hiding. We're beyond subtlety now." He walked closer. She could see a silhouette through the crack between canvases. Tall, black coat, calm, predatory movements. "You shouldn't have touched the wall. You weren't meant to be involved." Her pulse hammered. He knew. He knew about the mural. He knew about her. Elisa backed away in silence, toward the emergency exit that led to the alley. She could slip out and a hand slammed down on the frame right beside her face. He had anticipated her. "There's no point running," he murmured. Too close. Elisa jerked away and grabbed the nearest object, a heavy jar of brushes, and swung it blindly. It connected with his shoulder. Not enough to injure him, but enough to surprise him. He swore under his breath. Little artist bites. Interesting. Elisa bolted. She tore through the gallery. past the hanging lights, and shoved the emergency exit bar with both hands, bursting into the rain. Cold night air slapped her face as she sprinted down the alley. She could hear him following, not running, just walking, slow, confident. The kind of man who knew she'd eventually tire. Something moved to her right. A shadow detached itself from the brick wall. A hand grabbed her wrist. Elisa gasped, ready to fight, until she heard the whisper. "Elisa, it's me?" Nora. Her raincoat hood was pulled low, hair dripping, flashlight off. She pulled Elisa into a narrow gap between two buildings. "Don't speak," Nora breathed. "He'll hear your voice." The man's footsteps passed just beyond their hiding place. Slow, hunting. When he finally disappeared into the rain, Elisa sagged against the wall. "Who is he?" she whispered. Nora didn't look at her. Instead, she stared out at the deserted street, jaw clenched. "Someone who knows what the mural does," she said softly. "And someone who won't stop until you finish what you started." Elisa's blood ran cold. "Finish what?" Nora turned toward her, eyes sharp, voice barely audible. "Bringing him back." Chapter 14. The second door. The rain had stopped by the time they reached Nora's cottage. A sliver of moonlight pierced the clouds, cutting a pale stripe across the wet cobblestones. Nora unlocked the door with trembling fingers. Not fear, Elisa realized, but adrenaline. Inside, the cottage was small and warm, cluttered with stacks of books and old lanterns. The smell of tea leaves and sea salt filled the air. Nora locked the door behind them. 3 times. Elisa stood in the middle of the room, dripping and shivering. "Why did you say that?" she whispered. "Bringing him back." Nora didn't answer immediately. She lit a candle, placing it on the table between them. The flame threw long shadows across her face. "Because the mural is not just paint," Nora finally said. "It's an opening." Elisa swallowed hard. "An opening to what? To who?" Instead of responding, Nora stepped closer and gently took Elisa's wrist. "Show me where the paint touched you." Elisa hesitated, but rolled up her sleeve. Nora leaned in. There, just below the elbow, was a faint, thread-thin line of color. It pulsed faintly under the skin, like veins made of pigment. Nora's eyes widened with a mix of reverence and fear. "It's starting." Elisa yanked her arm back. "Starting? What's starting?" Nora grabbed a notebook from a drawer and flipped through pages filled with frantic writing. Sketches of the mural, symbols, notes dated over years. Years. "I've seen this before," Nora said. "Once." Elisa blinked. "On who?" Silence. Nora's lips pressed together, as if speaking would make it more real. "On the artist who painted the mural, Luca Murati." The name hit her like cold water. "The missing artist," Elisa whispered. Nora nodded. "Before he vanished, the paint started growing under his skin, just like yours." Elisa felt the room tilt. She grabbed the nearest chair before her knees gave out. "But I'm not. I didn't ask for this." Nora sat beside her, voice soft but intense. "The mural chooses, not the other way around." Elisa laughed, sharp, shaky. "This is insane. Paint doesn't choose. Paint doesn't." A sharp burn seared her arm. Elisa hissed and clutched her sleeve. When she rolled it back, the thin line of color had thickened, branching like a root system beneath her skin. "Nora, it's spreading." Nora grabbed a chill cloth and pressed it to Elisa's arm. The burning eased slightly. "Listen to me," Nora said, low and urgent. "Luca Murati disappeared because he fought it." Elisa's breath turned shallow. "And what happens if I don't fight it?" Nora met her eyes. "Then someone or something comes back." A knock thundered against the door. Both froze. Not frantic, not accidental. A single, heavy knock. Nora moved slowly to the door, staying silent, staying low. She peered through the small crack between curtain and window frame, her face drained of color. "He found us." Elisa grasped Nora's wrist. "What do we do?" Nora whispered, voice barely a breath. "We don't open the door." Another knock, louder. The voice that followed was deep, calm, certain. Miss Navarro, we need to finish what was started." Elisa backed away from the door, heart slamming against her ribs. And then, from the other side of the cottage, another knock from the back door. Nora's voice trembled. "There are two of them." Elisa's blood went cold. The second knock rattled the back wall. Elisa spun toward the rear of the cottage, staring at the tiny kitchen door that led to Nora's herb garden. The wood trembled under a slow, deliberate pressure, someone pressing their palm flat against it. Nora grabbed Elisa's hand. "We're moving. Now." She yanked Elisa toward a narrow staircase leading down, a trapdoor Elisa hadn't noticed before. The hatch blended with the floorboards, hidden under an old wool rug. "Basement," Elisa whispered. "Root cellar," Nora corrected. "And a storm tunnel. Old houses here were built on exits." Elisa hesitated as the pounding continued. Front door, back door, alternating, like they were coordinating. "Who are they?" she whispered. Nora didn't answer. She lifted the trapdoor, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. "Go." Elisa descended first, one hand on the wall, the other gripping her phone like a useless weapon. Nora followed and pulled the hatch down above them. Darkness swallowed them. Nora flicked on a small lantern. A circle of light revealed an old stone room, barrels of dried herbs, jars of sea salt, a rusted bicycle wheel hanging from a nail, and at the far end, a narrow tunnel made of uneven rock. Someone pounded on the trapdoor above them. Elisa flinched. "They know." "Let them know," Nora said. "They can't fit to the tunnel." Elisa's arm burned again. She looked down. The pain had spread further. Not just lines now. Tiny fragments of mural. Ocean waves, curling under her skin in faint strokes. Nora turned, eyes catching the glow of the lantern. Her voice wavered. "We don't have much time." They moved through the tunnel, footsteps echoing against cold stone. The air smelled of salt and old rain, water dripping somewhere in the distance. Behind them, there was a splintering crack. The trapdoor, splitting. Nora swore under her breath and pushed Elisa ahead. "Don't stop. Whatever happens, don't look back." They reached the end of the tunnel, which opened into a half-collapsed storm drainage channel. Elisa crawled to the narrow gap, mud soaking her jeans and palms. Rain hammered the metal grate above them. They were outside again. Nora climbed out after her, breathing hard. "Where are we?" Elisa whispered. Nora pointed. Elisa's blood chilled. They were behind the old abbey, the one on top of cliff, the place no one entered. The museum that wasn't. Thunder rolled, long and low. "Why here?" Elisa asked. Nora looked at her, like she was about to tell a truth she had avoided for too long. "Because this is where Luca Moretti disappeared." Elisa felt the world tilt. The mural, the paint, the calling. She was standing where the last artist had vanished. A sound cut through the rain. Not footsteps. A voice, coming from inside the abbey. Soft, rhythmic. "Elisa." Nora froze. "Did you hear that?" Elisa whispered. Nora shook her head. "No, I heard nothing." Elisa swallowed, because she had. And the voice wasn't coming from a person. It was coming from the paint under her skin. The voice echoed through her bones. Not loud, not external. Internal, like someone speaking from inside her bloodstream. Elisa, she staggered back from the abbey wall, clutching her arm. Nora caught her shoulders. "Elisa, look at me. What's happening?" "I heard him," Elisa whispered, her voice breaking. "It wasn't outside. It was in me." The rain lashed sideways as wind tore across the cliffs, bending the tall grass. The abbey loomed like a wounded skeleton. Its windows shattered, its roof caved in on one side. Nora scanned the cliff trail behind them. "We need to get under cover before." A distant metallic clang cut her off. The front gate to the abbey had moved. No one was touching it, but the rusted chain slithered and tightened, as if an invisible hand was pulling it taut. Elisa felt the paint burn beneath her skin. "Elisa, please." A plea. Soft. Human. She saw, briefly, like a flash, someone in her mind's eye, a man in a studio, palm stained with blue paint, looking over his shoulder. Elisa gasped, Luca Murdy. I saw him. Nora stiffened. You didn't see him. The mural is feeding you memories. He's gone. Elisa shook her head violently. No, this wasn't a memory. He was speaking to me. Right now. Lightning cracked open the sky. The Abbey's doors flew open, slamming against the stone. Boom, boom, boom. Nora swore under her breath. He's calling you inside. No, Elisa whispered. He's begging. Her arm pulsed. The pain had risen to the surface, raised like embossed ink. She traced a fingertip over the shape, waves, a fragment of the mural, moving under her skin as if alive. Nora grabbed her wrist. Elisa stopped touching it. I can't ignore it. You have to. Elisa jerked her arm away. Something inside her snapped. For days she had run. For days she had doubted herself. Let fear decide her next move. But Luca Moretti, the artist who lost himself to the mural, was reaching for her. He's trapped, Elisa whispered, and he wants out. Nora stepped between her and the door. No, you don't understand. This is how it starts. The paint makes you feel responsible. It manipulates empathy. That's how it took Luca. Elisa's pulse was a drumbeat. What if that voice is a manipulation? What if he's alive? He disappeared 3 years ago. Nora's voice cracked. People don't survive 3 years trapped in a painting. Elisa stared into the dark entrance of the Abbey. Then why do I hear him? The wind howled through broken glass. Somewhere inside, a flicker of pale blue light shimmered. Paint light. Nora grabbed her arm again, but Elisa gently removed her hand. No more running. She walked toward the door. Elisa. Nora's voice shook. If you go in there, I'm going with you. Elisa paused. For a second, a real human second, they simply looked at each other. Shared fear. Shared resolve. The world was storm and ruin and danger, but they were not alone. Elisa nodded once. Then we go together. They stepped into the Abbey. The door slammed shut behind them. The air inside the Abbey was damp and cold. Elisa and Nora crouched behind a massive canvas draped with a dusty cloth, their breaths shallow, their backs pressed against a stone wall. The only light came from a broken stained glass window, scattering shards of red and blue across the floor. Footsteps echoed through the nave. Slow, deliberate. The man in the black coat entered first, moving with the casual confidence of someone who knew he owned the space. The second man, younger, clean-cut, carrying a metal case, followed and set the case down on a pew. Elisa could hear the latches click open. Is it ready? The man in the coat asked. Yes, sir. The younger man replied. Once sealed, the portal collapses. No trace left. Portal. The word hit Elisa like a punch. She felt Nora tense beside her. The man in the coat continued. We should have done this 3 years ago, before Murdy Cross. Luca, they were talking about Luca. Elisa's pulse hammered. The pigment under her skin throbbed. Don't let them seal it again. His voice, inside her mind, was more urgent now. The younger man lifted something from the case, a cylindrical device with wires, like a construction tool. Ancient symbols etched along its rim. We activate from the mural chamber, he said. Once she is neutralized. Neutralized. Elisa's throat tightened. Nora leaned closer, whispering so softly Elisa barely heard her. They're here for you. The men moved toward a corridor, passing inches from where Elisa and Nora hid. When their footsteps faded, Nora mouthed, We run. But Elisa shook her head. For the first time, certainty filled her chest. I'm done running. She stepped out from behind the draped canvas. The man in the coat froze when he saw her. He didn't reach for a weapon. He smiled. Miss Navarro. Finally. Nora swore and jumped in front of Elisa, fists clenched, ready to fight. You don't get to touch her. But the man in the coat looked only at Elisa. You're hearing him, aren't you? Murdy, he's calling you. Elisa didn't speak. The paint under her skin pulsed. You think he wants to be saved, the man continued. But portals don't free people. They consume them. Elisa stepped closer. Then why do you stop them from opening? A flicker, just a flicker, of fear across his face. Because Once a portal chooses someone, it does not let go. The younger man approached, device in hand. Sir, we need to proceed. The man in the coat sighed. Very well. He looked at Elisa one more time. You should have stayed away. Elisa inhaled sharply. Then she said the one sentence she knew would throw everything off balance. Take me instead, but let Nora go. The man blinked, then smiled. Deal. Nora reacted first. No, absolutely not. She stepped between Elisa and the man in the black coat, fists up, rain-soaked and shaking with fury. Elisa's voice was steady. Let her go. The man ignored Nora completely. Follow me, Miss Navarro. He turned and walked deeper into the abbey, expecting obedience. The younger man motioned toward Nora with the device, as if to usher her away. Elisa didn't move. Not until I know she leaves unharmed. The man paused, a beat of silence. Then he nodded to a subordinate. The younger man lowered the device. She can walk out, front entrance. No one will stop her. Nora grabbed Elisa's arm, eyes wide with disbelief. You can't trust them. I don't, Elisa whispered, but I can't drag you into this. Nora shook her head violently. The mural is manipulating you. You're not thinking clearly. Elisa swallowed. Maybe for the first time, I am. Nora's expression cracked. Fear, anger, heartbreak pooling behind her eyes. Elisa, if you go with them, you won't come back. Elisa cupped her hands around Nora's face, rainwater dripping from both of them. Thank you for not letting me be alone here. Nora's breath hitched. You are not alone. I'm not leaving you. Elisa leaned closer, forehead against hers. You have to, because if Luca is trapped, I can't live with walking away. A sound echoed through the nave, metal scraping stone. The man in black grew impatient. Now, Miss Navarro. The younger man gestured toward the main doors. Nora wasn't crying, but her voice trembled like something breaking. If anything happens to you... Elisa smiled. Small, sad. Then paint me on the wall, too. Nora's jaw clenched. She stepped back. She looked at the man in black coat, like she wanted to kill him. Then, slowly, she turned and walked toward the exit. Elisa watched her disappear into the rain. When Nora was gone, Elisa faced the man. Where are we going? The man in the coat gestured toward a corridor descending underground to the mural chamber, where it began. Elisa followed them, down stone steps, into darkness. The air thickened, damp, heavy, charged. The younger man unlocked a rusted gate. On the far wall, hidden beneath centuries of salt and rock, was another mural, not the one on the cliff. An earlier version, rougher, raw, alive. Pigment pulsed along Elisa's arm, glowing faintly through her skin. The man in the coat spoke softly. Marty opened the door. You will close it. No, Elisa said. I'm opening it wider. The device hummed as the younger man activated it. Blue light surged through its core. You don't understand what you're doing, the man said. Elisa's voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. You're right. I'm not closing anything. She stepped toward the mural. The paint under her skin ignited, and the wall opened, not metaphorically, literally. Stone dissolved into liquid color, swirling like an ocean. The man shouted, Stop her. Too late. Elisa stepped into the mural and vanished. Nora Penrose didn't sleep. She sat at the small desk in her hotel room. The window opened to the cold night air rolling in from the sea. The manuscript pages, those cursed, fragile pages, were spread in front of her like evidence in a crime scene. Her fingers hovered above them, not daring to touch. Clay's warning from hours earlier echoed relentlessly in her head. Someone killed for this once. They might do it again. And now Elisa was missing. Nora closed her eyes. The room was silent, except for the slow pulse of distant waves hitting the rocks below. The world outside carried on, unaware of the tightening noose around them. A sudden knock shattered the silence. 3 short taps. Controlled, impatient. Nora froze. She didn't breathe. Another knock, harder this time. Her heart hammered as she crossed the room and pressed her eye to the peephole. Clay, disheveled, rain-soaked, pacing like a caged animal. She unlocked the door. He stepped in and shut it behind him, not bothering to wipe the water dripping off his jacket. "Still awake," he muttered. "Good. You said you'd call me from the docks," Nora whispered. "What happened?" Clay hesitated. Something he rarely did. "I found her phone," he said, "on the pier, with blood on the railing." Nora felt her knees weaken. "Elisa?" Clay shook his head. There were footprints. 2 sets. One small. Hers. One larger. Male. They stopped near the edge of the dock. And then they vanished. Nora covered her mouth, feeling the weight of dread crush her chest. "Who?" she choked out. "Who took her?" Clay didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the desk and stared at the manuscript. "It's not the manuscript," he said quietly. "It's what it points to." Nora blinked. "What does it point to?" "The names." She frowned. "The what?" Clay turned the page to the margin where she had seen strange handwritten initials, the ones she thought were just editing marks. Now, under Clay's harsh tone and frantic hands, they looked sinister. "Elisa called me earlier. She did a search based on these initials." He tapped the letters. "LM, she found a match, an Italian archivist from 20 years ago." Nora's blood ran cold. "Luca Moretti," Clay said. "You will later rename him Matteo Rinaldi. I'm keeping the placeholder to avoid confusion during drafting. He worked in a restricted archive in Florence. He was fired after documents vanished. Then he disappeared." Nora stared at the initials scratched into the manuscript margin. "LM, it can't be a coincidence," Nora whispered. Clay's jaw tightened. "It gets worse." He pulled from his jacket a folded newspaper clipping, damp and creased. "Archivist found dead in abandoned library basement, Florence. 2004. Nora's breath caught. The article didn't include a picture, just a single sentence describing the state of the body. He appeared to have been trying to burn a collection of 18th century letters. The room tilted around her. "Elisa traced the name," Clay said, "and hours later she vanished." Nora's voice barely emerged. "You think?" Someone silenced him. "And now her?" Clay didn't blink. "Someone has been protecting this manuscript for decades." He leaned closer, voice low. "And they're not done." Chapter 15. The Third Mark. The storm hit just before dawn. Wind slammed against the hotel windows, rattling them in their frames. Nora Penrose stood near the glass, staring at the violent sea below. In the reflection, she could see Clay pacing behind her, restless, agitated, dangerous in his stillness. Neither of them had slept. Someone knew Elisa was looking into Moretti. Nora said quietly. Clay didn't stop pacing. "Someone has known what we're doing since we set foot here." He paused at the desk. The manuscript lay half covered by night shadows, its pages trembling from the breeze, slipping under the window. The margin notes felt more ominous than ever. Nora touched the edges carefully, as if handling something radioactive. "These initials," she murmured. "Elum. We know they belong to Moretti. Matteo, whatever his real name was. That means the manuscript went through his hands." Clay nodded. "And he died trying to burn documents related to it." Nora's stomach tightened. "Then what are we missing?" Clay pulled something out of his jacket pocket. A USB drive sealed inside a small evidence bag. "Found this near her abandoned phone," he said. Nora blinked. "Elisa had a flash drive?" She must have downloaded something before she was taken. Probably from the archive database. He tossed it onto the desk. The USB slid to a stop against Nora's hand. An object that Tiny had gotten someone killed. Maybe two. "Clay," she whispered. "If whoever took Elisa realizes she copied something, they won't let her live." Clay didn't look away. "That's why we need to open it." Nora nodded, grabbed her laptop, and plugged the drive in. A single folder appeared on the screen. Penrose Archive, restricted access. Her heart lurched. "Penrose? Wait," she said. "That's my name." Clay leaned closer, brow furrowing. "You said your family never had any connection to academia, right?" Nora swallowed. "Not that I know of." She clicked. Inside the folder wasn't a file. It was a scanned image, an old ledger entry. Handwritten, faded with time. Clay read aloud. Deposit record. Private correspondence received from P. Penrose items stored. Collection of letters and annotated manuscript pages archive code. LM03. P. Penrose. Clay repeated slowly. That's not you. It could be my grandfather, Nora whispered, gripping the desk to steady herself. He died before I was born. My dad never spoke about him. Clay placed a hand on the table beside hers, close, but not touching. It means your family had these letters once. Nora stared at the ledger. Why would my grandfather deposit something into a secret archive? Clay's voice was low. Because someone wanted them hidden. Nora shook her head, overwhelmed. So, Luca Matteo, whatever name he used, he took the manuscript from the archive. My grandfather put it there. Elisa found the connection, and then she vanished. Clay traced a ledger entry with his finger, stopping on a code stamped in the corner. 3 symbols. 3. Nora frowned. What is that? Clay's expression darkened. It's not just a code. He leaned in close to the screen. It's a mark. He pulled out the newspaper clipping again, the archivist's death, in the grainy photo of a stone basement wall. Nora noticed something she hadn't before. The same mark, scratched near the body. 3 vertical strokes. Clay exhaled slowly. Whoever marked these documents leaves this symbol behind. Nora stared at the 3 lines. They looked simple. Thrillingly, terrifyingly simple. 3 what? She whispered. 3 people? 3 deaths? 3 owners? Clay shook his head. No, 3 locations. He pointed. Florence. Then the ledger reference. Then the manuscript. 1 mark per copy. Nora's breath caught. There are 3 manuscripts. Clay finished a thought for her. And someone is killing to keep them hidden. Lightning flashed, illuminating both of them. The USB, the manuscript, the mark. Nora closed the laptop. Clay's voice hardened into steel. We're going to find Elisa. Nora nodded. And we're going to find the second manuscript. She looked up at Clay, eyes fierce. Before the people who marked this do. Chapter 16. The name on the door. Valmora Bay, 7:12 a.m. Rain-soaked gray, the sea roaring against the outer harbor. Nora Penrose and Clay Whitford stood in front of the municipal records office, a squat concrete building with fog windows and a faded sign. Valmora Bay, Archive and Historical Registrations, the same place where Elisa had accessed the restricted files. The door was locked. Nora tried the handle again. They should be open. Clay scanned the empty street, jaw tight. Elisa came here the morning she disappeared. Someone doesn't want us getting in. Nora wiped rain from her eyelashes. Then we don't wait. She knocked, firm, insistent. From inside, movement. A dark silhouette. A latch clicking. The door opened. A thin man in his late 50s, glasses low on his nose, stared at them. Nora recognized him immediately. Mr. Henley, municipal archivist. The same man Elisa had mentioned in her notes. Henley blinked at Nora. Penrose. Nora froze. Clay stepped forward. We're looking for Elisa Navarro. She accessed restricted files last week. Henley's jaw tensed. His eyes flicked to the USB protruding from Nora's pocket. I can't discuss ongoing investigations. Clay leaned in. We didn't say there was an investigation. Henley swallowed. He had slipped. Nora softened her voice. We're not here to cause trouble. We only want to understand what you found. Henley hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the building smelled of damp paper and dust. Boxes and rolled maps lined the walls. Old microfilm readers sat covered in gray cloth. Henley locked the door behind them. Miss Navarro shouldn't have opened those files, he said quietly. Nora's pulse accelerated. Why are they restricted? Henley didn't answer. He crossed the room, opened a drawer, and pulled out a leather-bound ledger identical to one Nora had seen on the USB scans. He placed it on the table. Before I show you anything, he whispered, You need to understand that people in this town. He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes shifted past them. Nora and Clay turned. At the back of the archive, a metal door was slightly ajar. A basement room, with a name on a frosted panel. P. Penrose, Private Donation Repository. Nora's breath caught. My grandfather, she whispered. Why does he have a private archive room here? Henley's voice shook. Because he founded it. Nora blinked. My family has nothing to do with this town. Henley's face crumpled in fear. You don't know, do you? Clay stepped between them. Know what? Henley exhaled. His next words were barely audible. Your grandfather didn't deposit documents here. A beat. He built the entire archive just to hide them. Lightning cracked outside. Clay grabbed a flashlight from the desk. We're opening that room. Henley reached out, panicked. You can't. Clay ignored him and pushed the basement door. The smell of old salt and damp stone flooded out. Nora descended the steps, heart hammering. Clay followed with the flashlight. The stairs led into a narrow corridor lined with old wooden shelves. Boxes, files, everything covered in dust and mold. At the far end was a steel safe, half rusted, and on the wall beside it, 3 vertical marks. 3, the same symbol. Nora whispered, This is a 3rd mark. Clay tried the safe. Locked. Nora examined the metal. Scratches. It had been forced once before. Recently. Elisa was here, Nora whispered. She opened it. Clay lifted the flashlight. Something glimmered on the floor. A single object, half hidden under an overturned box. A photograph. He picked it up, wiped away the dust. Nora stared. It was a photo of Elisa, taken inside this very room. Captured mid-turn, her face blurred with fear. And behind her, in the corner of the photo, a figure appeared, half in the shadows. Watching, Clay clenched the photo. She didn't disappear by accident. Nora turned slowly, scanning the dim room. Someone was down here with her. Then, from upstairs, a door slammed. Footsteps, rapid, heavy, moving toward the basement stairs. Clay's hand reached instinctively for Nora's arm. Nora whispered, barely breathing, He's here. The footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. The light went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. Chapter 17. The Man on the Stairs. For a moment, Nora couldn't breathe. Clay kept his grip on her wrist, steady and firm. The footsteps above were slow now, measured, not someone running. Someone approaching. Clay leaned close, whispering in her ear, Don't move. They listened. Boards creaked. A faint exhale. Someone was standing at the top of the basement stairs, watching. Nora's heart pounded so hard she could hear her pulse in her ears. She squeezed Clay's arm and mouthed, Elisa. The photograph in his hand was proof. Elisa had been here. Recently. Clay carefully angled the flashlight, trying not to click it on. He whispered, If we run, he hears us. If we stay, he reaches us. Nora swallowed. 3rd option? Clay paused. Ambush. Before she could protest, he released her wrist and stepped away, staying low, moving toward a stack of crates. Evidently, Clay was done being hunted. Nora reached the nearest shelf. The wood was cold, damp, and splintered. She crouched behind a pillar of old map tubes, holding her breath. A soft clink echoed from above. Keys. Metal. Someone was locking the door. A deep voice drifted into the basement, calm, deliberate. Mayo, you shouldn't be here. The tone wasn't angry. It was worse, familiar, the voice of someone used to authority. Someone who believed Nora and Clay had no power at all. Clay flicked the flashlight on. Full beam, aimed straight at the stairs. The man didn't flinch. He descended slowly, 1 step at a time, the overhead light behind him outlining him in silhouette. When he stepped into the cone of the flashlight, Nora's stomach dropped. It was Chief Inspector Harrington, uniform partially unbuttoned, radio clipped his belt, reins still on his shoulders. Nora's voice caught in her throat. You? Clay didn't lower the flashlight. You've been here before. Harrington's expression didn't change. He kept coming down. The archive basement is restricted. Miss Navarro ignored that. His eyes slid to Nora. Now you're doing the same. Nora stepped out from behind the shelves. Fury overtaking fear. You lied. You told us Elisa left town. You told us there was no investigation. Harrington paused on the final step. I told you what would keep you from getting in the way. Clay clenched his jaw. You moved her case to cold without telling anyone. Harrington looked at him coldly. I moved it to classified. He took another step forward, and Nora noticed something else. His boots, covered in dry sand, not from the roads, not from the harbor, sand from the caves, the ones where Elisa vanished. Nora's breath wavered. You were at the caves. Harrington's eyes hardened. I was cleaning the mess she left behind. Clay surged forward, fists clenched, but Harrington didn't flinch. He reached into his coat pocket. Clay tensed. But instead of a gun, Harrington pulled out a small, square object, a key card. He tossed it onto the floor at Nora's feet. You want answers? His voice was low, almost pitying. That opens the safe. The safe behind her. Nora stared at it, then back at him. Why give this to us? Harrington exhaled, the exhaustion suddenly visible on his face. Because you're too late. Nora froze. Too late for what? Harrington turned his head slightly, listening, as if expecting someone else to arrive. Then, quietly, Elisa didn't disappear. A beat. She was taken. Nora's knees nearly buckled. Clay stepped forward. Taken by who? Harrington met Nora's eyes directly. By the one who wears the mark. Then the building alarm suddenly shrieked. Red lights flashed. The door upstairs slammed open. Nora spun toward Clay. Someone else is here. Harrington backed toward the stairs, voice rising over the alarm. Find what's in the safe. And run. Then he disappeared into the darkness above. Nora grabbed the keycard off the floor. Clay steadied her. We open it. Now. Nora slid the keycard into the safe. A mechanical click. A hiss as the seal released. Inside was a leather-wrapped bundle of documents, a torn passport, and a phone. Elisa's phone. Screen cracked. Battery dead. Nora gasped. Clay grabbed the bundle. We're leaving. But as they turned toward the stairs, someone else stood at the top. Not Harrington. Tall. Still. Face hidden by the shadows. Just watching them. Nora felt her blood go cold. Clay whispered. We're not alone. The figure didn't move, but the voice did. Soft. Whispered. Elisa never should have opened the door. Chapter 18. The Safe's Secret. The stranger remained motionless at the top of the stairs. Nora felt Clay's grip tighten around her elbow. The red emergency light pulsed through the stairwell, turning the figure into a silhouette, just an outline. Nothing human should be that still. Clay lowered his voice. We go through him. We don't stay trapped in the basement. But Nora wasn't looking at the figure. She was staring at the bundle Clay held. Inside the safe, wedged beneath Elisa's phone, she glimpsed something else. A folded nautical map, with a symbol drawn over the cliffs. 3. The same mark burned into photograph. The same mark carved inside the caves. The figure on the stairs took one step down. Click. Nora and Clay froze. Another step. Click. Slow, deliberate. The sound of leather saws on wood. Clay whispered. If he reaches the bottom, he blocks us. Nora didn't think. She grabbed a heavy metal flashlight from Clay's hand, turned back toward the safe, and swept everything inside the bag. Elisa's phone, the passport, the documents, the map. Slam. Bag zipped. Done. The footsteps sped up. Clay moved in front of her like a shield. Run when I tell you. Not before. The stranger reached the midpoint of the stairs. Lightning flashed through the high window, illuminating him just enough. His face was partially visible now. Blank. Expressionless. Like someone reciting an emotion rather than feeling it. His lips moved, but they didn't part. Words escaped anyway. Like breath pushed through teeth, she opened what was meant to stay buried. Nora felt the bag strap cut into her shoulder. Her voice came out raw. What did you do to Elisa? The figure tilted his head, the movement jerky, unnatural, like a puppet responding to a string being yanked. Elisa was warned. Clay stepped forward. "You're not leaving this building." The figure answered with a sound that might have been a laugh, but it was too mechanical, too precise. "Leaving isn't your choice." The final 3 steps flew by, and Nora didn't wait for Clay's signal. She shoved him aside and launched forward, swinging the metal flashlight with all her weight. The light cracked into the wall where the man's head had been. But he wasn't there. He was already behind them. "Go!" Clay grabbed Nora's wrist, pulling her. They sprinted up the stairs, the alarm vibrating to the floor, the emergency lights flickering red and white. At the top, the exit door burst open. Wind and rain slammed into Nora's face. Clay shoved her outside. "Run." They tore down the alley, Nora gripping the bag with one hand, Clay's jacket with the other. Behind them, the building's door swung open again. The stranger stepped into the alley, but he didn't chase. He just stood there in the storm, watching them flee. Lightning lit the sky, and for one instant, Nora saw his reflection in a puddle. His eyes weren't reflecting the light. They were absorbing it. They didn't stop running until they reached Clay's car. He yanked the passenger door open. "Get in." Nora slid inside, chest burning. He threw the bundle into her lap, started the engine, tires screeching across wet asphalt. Only once they were safely on the road did Nora finally speak. "We need to open the documents." Clay nodded, still breathless. "What's in the bag?" Nora unwrapped the bundle. Inside, Elisa's cracked phone, torn passport, a set of papers typed on ivory stationery and the map. But the passport made Nora's blood freeze. It wasn't Elisa's. Clay glanced over. "Whose is it?" Nora turned the passport toward him. Name on the ID page. Nora Penrose. Clay slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop on the empty coastal road, waves crashing below the cliff. Nora couldn't look away from the passport. Photo of her. Same face, same eyes, different birth date, different birthplace. Not London. Valmora Bay. Clay whispered, horrified. They didn't take Elisa because she was in danger. He turned toward Nora. They took her because she found out about you. The fake or real? Passport lay open on Nora's lap. The wind howled outside like a living thing. She stared at the ID photo. Her own face. No doubt. But underneath, place of birth, Valmora Bay, Cornwall. Her voice came out strained, barely audible. "This is impossible. I was born in London. I remember the hospital room. I remember." She stopped. What did she remember? White walls, a fluorescent light overhead, her mother's grip on her hand. But never the hospital name, never a doctor, never a sign, never context. Clay leaned closer, voice steady but soft. "Nora, memories could be planted." Nora jerked her eyes toward him. "Don't start with manipulation theories." Clay cut her off. "You told me once that you don't have baby photos." "I do." She searched her mind. Birthday parties, school photos, teen years. But not a single image of her as a newborn. Clay spoke gently, trying not to overwhelm her. "Not of you as a baby. Not of you with your mother in a hospital. Not of you in a crib." He paused. "Just you at age 4. Nora felt her pulse accelerate. She squeezed her temples. "My mother avoided cameras. She hated photos." Clay's expression didn't waver. "Or maybe," he whispered, "someone took them." The rain hammered the roof. Thunder shook the cliffs. Nora shut the passport, crushing in her fist. "Why would anyone hide where I was born?" Clay turned off the engine. Silence fell, thick and final. He gestured toward the bundle of documents. "Let's see what else was in the safe." Nora unwrapped them. Handwritten pages, old, brittle, tied with twine. At the top, elegant cursive spelling out a name. P. Penrose Private Journal. Her grandfather. Nora swallowed and started reading aloud. The third mark must remain hidden. Those who are called do not choose. They are chosen. A chill ran down her spine. Clay rested his hand on the steering wheel, knuckles white. The third mark The same symbol carved in the cave. The one on Elisa's photo. Nora continued, voice trembling. The girls do not remember the cove. We take them before speech forms memory. Clay's eyes shot up. Girls? Plural? Nora turned the page. Nora Penrose, transfer successful. Subject removed from Valmora Bay records. The paper shook in her hands. She wasn't adopted. She was transferred. Her voice broke. They erased me. Clay reached across the console, squeezing her hand through the panic. Nora, look at me. The question isn't why they moved you. Thunder boomed overhead. It's why they brought you back. Before she could answer, the passenger window lit up, a blinding white beam. Someone had pulled up behind them. Not a car. Headlights too high, too bright. Clay's face drained of color. That's not a car. Nora turned. Up on the cliff road, a large white van idled. No plates, just like the one Elisa had described in her voice memo. Clay's voice was urgent. Get the documents. We're moving. He started the engine. But before the car could shift into gear, the van's rear door swung open. A figure stepped out. Tall, expressionless, the same silhouette from the archive. Nora's blood froze. He began walking toward the car. Clay slammed the accelerator. Tires screamed. The car lurched toward the coastal road. The van's headlights flared brighter. Too bright. Clay squinted, trying to see the road, and then the world went white. A roar, a crash of metal, glass exploding. Everything spun. Nora's scream was swallowed by the sea and the storm. Then darkness. Chapter 19. The Black Water. For a moment, Nora wasn't sure whether she was alive. Everything was sound, roaring, crushing. The sea. Her lungs convulsed as salt water forced its way in. She tried to move, but something pinned her down. The seatbelt twisted tight across her chest. I'm underwater. Her brain finally caught up. She was inside Clay's car, submerged, the ocean pressing against the windows like a living weight. The dashboard lights flickered and died one by one. Bubbles escaped her mouth. She couldn't inhale. Panic clawed through her. Nora fumbled for the belt release, fingers slipping on the metal. The pressure squeezed her ribs like a vice. She braced her feet, pushed. Nothing. The belt was jammed. She could see Clay through the fractured windshield. Unconscious, slumped against the airbag, blood blooming on his forehead. Nora slammed her fist against the belt latch. Click. It didn't move. She used both hands, pulled. A jolt of pain shot down her arm. The metal tasted like rust and salt. A shard of glass drifted past her face, spinning like a silver leaf. You can't die here. She forced her trembling hand down her leg, reached for her boot. Her fingers brushed something. The metal flashlight she'd carried from the archive. Nora grabbed it, swung at the belt latch with what strength she had left. Crack! The mechanism snapped. The belt released. Her limbs burned with adrenaline. She swam toward the driver's side, fighting the weight of her soaked clothes. Clay wasn't moving. Nora hooked her arm under his and pulled. He didn't respond. The car shifted with the current, rotating slowly, nose downward toward deeper water. Her chest screamed for air. Nora pressed her face to Clay's, whispering through the choking water. Clay, wake up, please. She pushed off the seat and kicked hard toward the shattered passenger window. Her shoulder hit the metal frame. Pain exploded down her arm. She wriggled through the gap. Her lungs were on fire. The surface was a smear of silver above her, distant, unreachable. Her body convulsed, forcing her to inhale. No. She clamped her lips. Her vision blurred. She reached the last few meters. Her hand broke the surface. Air ripped into her chest like knives. Clay! She gasped, voice shredded. She dove back under, grabbed him by the collar, and kicked with everything she had. The ocean fought her, pulled him down. She screamed underwater, bubbles streaming from her mouth as she dragged him upward. They broke the surface together. Clay coughed once, water and blood. He was alive. Nora wrapped her arm around him, gasping in disbelief. Then headlights flashed on the cliff above. The white van was there, watching, waiting. The figure stood beside it. Still, dark silhouette against the storm. Clay rasped, voice raw. Nora, swim to the cove. Tide's going out. She looked ahead. The outline of the sea caves where Elisa disappeared. Lightning lit the sky. No other choice. With Clay half conscious in her arms, Nora swam toward the mouth of the cave as the ocean pulled them in. The van disappeared from the cliff. They made it to the rocks, slipping, bleeding, freezing. Nora dragged Clay inside the cave just as a wave smashed behind them. They collapsed onto cold stone. Clay coughed hard, bracing himself against the wall. Nora, shivering and breathless, whispered, "They tried to kill us." Clay wiped blood from his forehead. "No!" He looked at her with haunted clarity. "They tried to bring you back." Behind them, a low sound echoed. Someone else was already inside the cave. A pair of footsteps. Slow, measured. Nora turned. From the darkness, a voice echoed, familiar and broken. "Nora." A figure stepped into the pale glow of lightning filtering through the entrance. Soaked, shaking, alive. Elisa Navarro. Chapter 20. The Ones Who Remember. Nora couldn't speak. Elisa Navarro, pale, soaked, trembling, stood at the mouth of the cave where lightning occasionally revealed her outline. She looked like a ghost, except for one thing. She was breathing. Clay pushed himself upright against the rock wall, still coughing seawater. Nora stumbled toward Elisa, voice cracking. "Elisa, we thought you were dead." Elisa blinked, confusion filtering in and out of her expression. She held one arm across her ribs, as if every breath hurt. I heard the crash," she whispered. "I followed the tide. I thought." Her gaze fell on Clay, blood still streaking down his forehead. "You're hurt." Clay tried to breathe normally. It came out ragged. "I've had worse." "Where the hell have you been?" Elisa stepped deeper into the cave, glancing behind her like a hunted animal. "They're watching," she whispered. "They're always watching." Nora held out a hand. "Elisa, who?" "Who took you?" Elisa's eyes darted toward the cave entrance, where faint moonlight filtered through ragged openings in the rock. "Not who." Elisa breathed. Her voice shook. "What?" Lightning cracked outside, illuminating the cave ceiling. The symbol burned into the rock above them. 3. Nora staggered backward. Clay swore under his breath. The same mark from the archive. The same mark on the map. Elisa winced, folded her arms around herself. "Do you know what it means?" "No," Nora whispered. "But you do." Elisa nodded, then took a shaky breath. "There are 3 marked children." Nora's stomach turned to ice. Elisa continued, voice barely above a whisper. "First child, vanished at sea before her 3rd birthday. Second child, taken from her mother and relocated. 3rd child, never identified." Clay looked between the 2 women, realization dawning. "You're saying the 2nd child is Nora." Elisa looked at Nora, tears filling her eyes. "Your birth wasn't recorded in London. Your mother." Nora cut her off, anger rising with panic. "I remember my mother." Elisa shook her head gently. "You remember what they let you remember." Nora's pulse thundered. Her voice broke. "Why would anyone erase who I am?" Elisa took a step closer, gripping Nora's arms. "Because you are part of Valmora Bay. This town was made to protect something or someone, and you were removed, hidden, so that the prophecy couldn't complete." "What prophecy?" Clay demanded. Elisa's hands loosened on Nora. "The prophecy of the 3rd mark." Thunder rolled outside, like the sea itself reacted to the name. Elisa continued, voice cracking. "Only when all 3 marked children return to the place of origin will the gate open." Nora shook her head, the cave spinning around her. "This is insane. A gate? A prophecy? I'm not." She stopped, because Elisa's eyes weren't focused on her anymore. Elisa was staring over Nora's shoulder. Nora turned slowly. On the cave wall behind her, water had washed away sediment, revealing something carved deep into the rock. Not just a mark. A name. Nora Penrose, 1997. Her birth year. Carved before she could speak. Before she could remember. Clay exhaled a single word. Proof. Nora staggered backward, dizzy, breathless. No, no, this can't be real. Elisa reached out, steadying her. They didn't erase your past. They buried it. A shadow shifted in the deeper part of the cave. Elisa froze. Clay tightened his grip on the flashlight, jaw clenched. From the darkness, a voice echoed. She was never meant to return. Footsteps, slow, measured, like someone who'd been waiting for this moment for decades. Nora whispered, voice breaking. Who's there? The shadow emerged. A man in a dark coat. Cold eyes. Rain dripping from his sleeves. Clay's voice dropped to a whisper. Harrington. Chief Inspector Harrington stepped into the faint light, but his badge wasn't visible. Instead, hanging around his neck, the same 3 symbol on a metal medallion. He didn't draw a weapon. He didn't need to, because he looked at Nora like someone looking at a prophecy finally fulfilled. You should have stayed buried, he said. Chapter 21. The Man with the Third Mark. Chief Inspector Harrington took one deliberate step forward. His boots did not splash. He knew exactly where to walk, as if he'd memorized every stone in this cave years ago. Elisa instinctively positioned herself in front of Nora, shaking but defiant. Clay raised a flashlight like a weapon. Stay back. But Harrington didn't even look at him. His words were aimed only at Nora. You were taken away from us. Hidden. Protected. He tilted his head slightly. And yet here you are. Nora swallowed hard, voice thin. You knew who I was this entire time. I knew what you were. Elisa's voice cracked with fury. She's a person, not a... Harrington's voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. She is a key. Lightning illuminated the cave again, bright enough to reveal what hung beneath his coat. A metal medallion, not round, triangular, stamped with the same symbol. 3. The third mark. Nora took a step back, chest tight. Clay kept the flashlight fixed on Harrington. The beam trembled, not from his hand, but from the pounding of the waves outside. Harrington continued, voice low and reverent. The first child was meant to drown. The second was stolen away. The third has never stopped waiting. Nora shook her head. There is no prophecy. There's no fate. This is a crime. You still don't understand, Harrington said softly. He reached into his coat. Clay tensed. But Harrington didn't pull a gun. He pulled out a small, water-warped notebook, bound in soft black leather. He held it as though it were holy. He opened to a fragile page and read aloud. When the 3 fragments reunite, when past returns origin, the deep will remember. Nora whispered. Elisa found that. Harrington snapped the notebook shut. Elisa interfered. She wasn't meant to. Elisa's voice was raw. I only photographed what was already here. And by doing so, Harrington said, eyes narrowing, you reopened the path. You set everything in motion. He turned to Nora, not aggressive, but almost reverent. The town didn't bring you back to harm you. It brought you back to complete what was unfinished. The cave shook, deep rumbling, like something massive shifting beneath the water. Clay gripped Nora's arm. Elisa, what is he talking about? What path? Elisa shut her eyes, voice trembling. There's something under Valmora Bay. Something that only opens when all 3 marked children are together. Clay laughed once, humorless, terrified. So what? You're opening a door? Harrington's eyes glinted. The gate. Another tremor rolled through the cave, stronger this time. Pebbles rained from the ceiling. Nora yelled over the echoing rumble. Why me? Harrington stepped closer, slow, reverent. You were born here, under the symbol, under the tide. You carry the mark in your blood. Nora's voice splintered. No, I don't. Harrington just pointed at her collarbone. Look. Nora froze. Her collarbone. Her skin glowed faintly under the cave's bioluminescent algae. Not bright, just enough to show an outline. A faint, pale scar. 3. Nora staggered backward. No, 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 no. Elisa caught her as she swayed. You didn't choose this, Elisa whispered. Harrington lowered his voice. The fire in his eyes was terrifying. Once the three marks are reunited, the gate opens, and the sea gives back what was taken. Clay shouted, voice cracking, "There is no third marked child. You said one drowned." Harrington's lips curved into a slow, terrible smile. She didn't drown. He turned his head toward the inner darkness of the cave. There she is. A ripple of movement, small, fragile. A child's silhouette emerged from the blackwater corridor, bare feet slapping against the stone, wet hair clinging to her tiny face, maybe 6 years old, eyes black as the deep sea, silent, watching. Nora's breath left her body in a rush. "Oh, my God!" The child tilted her head, same way Nora does when confused. Same bone structure, same eyes. Harrington whispered, "Nora Penrose, meet your sister." Chapter 22. The Girl in the Tidal Passage. For a long, unbearable moment, no one moves. The little girl stands motionless in the cave's half-darkness. Bare feet, thin dress soaked through, hair clinging to her cheeks. She is impossibly still. Nora can barely breathe. Her throat tightens. Who are you?" The child blinks, slow. Her voice is soft, distant, like she learned speech by echo. "My name is Alia," a name no one in Valmora Bay has ever spoken aloud. Clay whispers, "Alia the first marked child?" Harrington doesn't answer. He watches Nora instead. Hunger in his eyes. Alia lifts her chin and steps fully into the cave's light. Lightning flashes. Nora gasps. On the child's collarbone, faint, pale, almost glowing, is the same mark. 3, identical to Nora's. Alia lifts her hand toward Nora, palm open, like an invitation. "I dreamed of you," she says. "You were on the other side of the water. They said you would come back." Nora shakes her head, backing away. "I don't understand. How are you alive? You were taken by the sea?" Alia finishes. "No, I was kept, like something stored." Clay steps between them, protective. "You're not touching her. Not until we know what the hell is going on." Harrington's expression hardens. He switches from reverent to dangerous. "Clay," Harrington says quietly, "you don't belong here." Clay doesn't move. "Try to make me leave." Harrington lifts the medallion at his neck. Not threatening, just showing. And the moment the symbol catches the glow of the bioluminescent cave algae, Alia reacts. Her eyes dilate. She tilts her head, not toward Harrington, but toward the dark tunnel behind her, the one that trembles with tides. A deep sound rises, not thunder this time. A whining vibration. Mechanical. Clay's eyes widen. Elisa, Nora, someone else is down here. Footsteps echo from the tunnel. Not one pair. Multiple. Elisa backs up, voice shaking. They're coming through the lower caverns. Harrington's voice remains calm. They were waiting for the third mark. Nora's hands tremble. "Why me?" Alia looks at her. No fear in her expression. Just inevitability. "Because you were the only one who ran." Nora staggers backward, feet slipping on wet stone. The cave feels like a throat closing around her. Clay grabs Nora's shoulders. "Listen to me. Prophecies don't make people gods. People make prophecies to control other people." But the ground rumbles beneath them, harder this time. The tidal pool behind Harrington drops, revealing stone steps descending into impossible blackness. A doorway of water. A moon pool. Elisa whispers, horrified, "That's the gate." Alia turns and walks toward it without hesitation. Harrington doesn't grab her. He bows his head. Clay snaps. "You think this child opened some portal? To what? Heaven?" Harrington's answer is a whisper of awe. "To the memory of the deep." Nora lunges forward. "Alia, stop." Alia turns. "Calm. You came back, but we can't leave until all three march are together." She gestures toward Elisa. Nora's blood runs cold. "No, Elisa isn't." Elisa slowly pulls down the collar of her shirt. They're faint, small, scarred. 3. Clay stares in horror. "Nora, she's a third." Harrington smiles. The circle is complete. A roar of water erupts from the moon pool, rising like a living column. Alia takes Nora's hand. Elisa takes Nora's other hand. Their skin burns with the same heat. The marks begin to glow. The water rises higher. Nora screams over the roar. I do not accept this. Harrington's voice is gentle, reverent, terrifying. You were never meant to have a choice. The water surges, and the cave swallows them in a blinding white flash. The tunnel narrowed until Nora could feel the walls brushing her shoulders. Salt and cold coated her skin. She forced herself forward, one hand on the slick stone, the other gripping the flashlight that flickered with every vibration of the wind above. Behind her, footsteps. Elisa's breath shallow, panicked. Ahead of them, Alia moved barefoot, silent, almost floating over the uneven rock. Slow down, Nora whispered. We don't have time, Alia replied without turning. They emerged into a cavern so tall that the light from Nora's flashlight never touched the ceiling. The cave opened like the inside of a cathedral carved by the ocean itself. Black water pooled in a circle at the center, still as glass. And floating above it, impossibly, was a mark. A faint shimmer of 3 on the surface of the water, not drawn but made from pale blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The sea inside this cavern was alive. Nora froze. What is that? Alia stepped to the edge of the pool and spoke as if reciting something memorized long ago. Memory doesn't drown here. It waits. Elisa shook her head. This is insane. We need to get out now. Alia finally turned, and when she looked at Nora, Nora felt something shift inside her. Recognition. Connection. As if the years between them collapsed. You left, Alia said quietly. You were chosen too. Nora's throat tightened. I was a child. I didn't know. I ran. Alia smiled with no blame, only certainty. You were never meant to escape. From the shadows beyond the rock pillars, additional lights appeared, lanterns, men, cloaks dark with sea spray. Among them, Harrington. He stepped into the pale glow of the water, face composed, eyes bright with triumph. Welcome home, Nora. Elisa moved in front of Nora in reflex. Stay away from her. Harrington ignored the threat and addressed Alia. Begin. Alia nodded and knelt by the pool, sleeves falling to reveal the burn mark, 3, on her wrist. Nora grabbed her arm. Stop. Alia, listen to me. We can help you. You don't have to do this. Alia's voice softened, but her eyes remained on the water. It's not about choice. Harrington raised his lantern, and the cavern walls glistened with carvings, spirals, waves, faces, eyes. A history no one had ever spoken aloud. The sea keeps what the world forgets, he murmured. And tonight, the sea gives back. Alia opened her palm over the water. A faint blue thread of light rose, meeting Nora's wrist where the same mark pulsed under her skin. The third pulse came from Elisa. The symbol completed itself in the pool. The water churned. Roar, not like waves, like something waking. Elisa stumbled backward. No, what is that? The water split, revealing something beneath. Not rock, not sand. A surface smooth as bone. Or ice. Or a door. Harrington whispered, ecstatic. The gate. The water kept draining, as if pulled downward by unseen force. Alia stepped onto the newly revealed surface and looked back at Nora, the blue light dancing on her face. You can't outrun what you are. Something pressed back from beneath the ice-like surface. A shadow, a shape, a hand. Nora's heart slammed against her ribs. It was reaching up. The surface below Alia's feet shone like frozen moonlight, polished, translucent, impossibly smooth. It wasn't ice. It was memory. The sound beneath, it was not water anymore. It was breathing. Elisa backed away, her voice trembling. Nora, we need to leave. Right now. Nora couldn't move. Alia lifted her palm. Blue veins of light spread under the translucent layer, branching like roots, forming lines that converged into the glyph 3. 3 chosen, 3 bound. The glowing threads connected Alia to Nora and then to Elisa. Elisa staggered back, horrified. Why me? I never asked for this. Harrington stepped closer, lantern raised. The sea chooses memory, not desire. Nora snapped. She doesn't belong to your cult. Harrington smiled, calm, righteous, terrifying. This isn't a cult, Miss Penrose. It's preservation. He paced the edge of the drained pool, speaking like a professor lecturing children. This world forgets. Names. Histories. People vanish from memory as if they never existed. He pointed to the glowing gate. But what is forgotten by the world is kept here. Nora's voice dropped to a whisper. Kept how? Harrington's smile widened. Show her. Alia pressed her bare palm to the gate. The cavern exploded with light. Vision slammed into Nora like a tidal wave. She saw, not with her eyes, but with her mind, a child on the cliff edge, wind tearing her hair, a hand pulling her back, that same hand pushing another child forward. Alia, the two girls connected, bound, chosen. Nora gasped, knees buckling. I didn't leave you. They took me. Alia opened her eyes. Tears shone, but her expression didn't break. They erased you from the world, from me. Elisa's heart pounded so loudly she thought they'd all hear it. If this gate keeps memories, then opening it releases what was forgotten. Harrington finished. The translucent surface cracked. Once, a lightning bolt of light shot up Nora's arm, burning through her veins. Alia gasped as the same force hit her. Elisa screamed as the mark under her skin ignited. Cracks spiderwebbed across the gate. Harrington lifted both arms as if conducting a symphony. At last, the surface shattered. But instead of breaking down, it broke up, rising into the air like shards of glowing glass, suspended weightlessly. From the darkness below, something emerged, a shape climbing upward. Slow, silent. Elisa took Nora's hand. Tell me that's not a person. The shape stepped onto the cavern floor. Not a corpse, not a spirit. A man, soaked, pale, breathing air for the first time in decades. Alia fell to her knees in reverence. Nora whispered, trembling, unable to breathe, Father? His eyes opened, and they were empty, not dead, not alive, rewritten. The first of the forgotten had returned. Chapter 23. The Man Who Has No Past. Elisa had seen death before, hospital rooms, silent morgues during her design work on memorial murals. But she had never seen something returned. The man stood in front of them, water dripping from his clothes. He blinked slowly, as if learning how to use his eyelids. Nora released Elisa's hand and staggered forward. Dad? Adam Penrose, it's me. Nora. Her voice broke. He didn't react. Not a flinch. Not recognition. Not even confusion. Just emptiness. Alia stepped beside him like a priestess ushering a relic into the world. He remembers nothing. He is the first reclamation. Proof the gate works. Nora cupped her father's face with trembling fingers. Dad, look at me. Please. His eyes shifted to her, not focusing, not connecting, just responding to movement. Harrington clasped his hands behind his back, satisfied. The body is intact. The mind will follow. Nora spun toward him, rage cracking her voice. You erased him. We preserve what the world lost. Harrington corrected calmly. Memory is pain. We returned him freed from it. Elisa stepped between them. You didn't save him. You hollowed him out. Harrington tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle piece that suddenly didn't fit. You shouldn't be connected to the gate. You weren't chosen. Elisa's mark pulsed, that burning line under her skin. Trust me, it wasn't voluntary. The cavern rumbled, low, distant thunder that reverberated under their feet. Drip, drip, drip. The cave was filling. High tide. Alia looked at Elisa with unnerving serenity. You're not an intruder. You're the balance. The gate opens with 3. One remembers. One returns. One chooses. Elisa swallowed. And which am I? Alia didn't blink. You choose who is forgotten. Elisa reeled back as if slapped. Nora stared at her father, a stranger wearing a familiar face. No. Elisa won't do anything for you. Harrington walked toward the rising path, gesturing for the followers to move. Nora Penrose, Your father's mind will rebuild, but not here. You may stay until the high tide completes the binding, or leave with us." "Leave?" Nora asked. "And abandon him? He doesn't know you," Harrington replied. "He does not miss what he can't remember." Nora's knees nearly buckled. Elisa put an arm around her. "We're not leaving him." Harrington motioned to the followers. Several cloaked figures moved toward Elisa and Nora. Elisa felt a flicker of panic, and then something else. The mark burned hotter. Sharp, electric, alive. The cave water surged higher. Elisa heard a voice, soft, not external, not forgotten, not erased, taken. Elisa flinched. Who said that? But Nora, Alia, Harrington, none reacted. Only Elisa heard it. She looked at the gate shards still floating above the pool, glowing, and in them reflections, not of the cave, of places she had never seen. A child on a swing, a woman crying on a train, a hand covering another in a hospital bed. Memories, not hers. Harrington's followers moved closer, cornering them. Elisa whispered to Nora, "I think I can stop them." "How?" Nora breathed. Elisa lifted her marked hand. "I think I can take something back." Harrington turned, eyes widening. Fear, actual fear. "Don't touch the gate." Elisa stepped toward the light. "Watch me." Her fingers brushed the nearest shard. A violent flash. The cavern filled with screams. The scream wasn't from Elisa. It was from everyone else. As her fingertips touched the floating shard of the gate, a shockwave tore through the cavern. A burst of white-blue light that rippled outward like a heartbeat. The cloaked followers collapsed, clutching their heads. Harrington staggered backward, horror in his eyes. "No, she isn't a keeper. She's a conduit." Elisa felt heat shoot through her arm, racing up her spine. Images flooded her mind, hundreds, thousands, overlapping like broken film. A teenage boy being dragged into sea by robed figures. A mother screaming on a pier as her daughter disappears beneath the tide. Harrington smiling while a man signs a contract with shaking hands. Elisa gasped, "These are their memories, the ones you stole." Nora blinked, stunned. "You can see them?" "No." Elisa whispered, trembling. "I can take them back." The shard pulsed, light flowing into her palm. Every stolen memory, every erased name, every person Valmora Bay had lost, flowed into her veins like fire. She stepped forward, the cave water splashing around her ankles. Alia rushed in front of her, voice sharp, almost pleading. "Stop. You're not meant to carry that weight." Elisa stared back, eyes burning with something the sea cult didn't expect. Defiance. "You didn't choose me." "The gate did." Alia faltered. Harrington regained his voice, desperate. "If you take more, the memories will drown you. The gate doesn't give, it devours." Elisa's voice was steady. "I'm not here to receive. I'm here to return." She thrust her marked hand toward Adam Penrose, Nora's father. The mark ignited like a sun. A beam of light shot forward, striking Adam in the chest. His body jerked. And then a sound escaped him. A gasp. A memory returned. His eyes sharpened, focusing, recognizing Nora's face as if for the first time in years. "Nora?" Nora broke. "Dad." Her voice was a sob and a prayer at once. He reached for her, hand shaking. I remember you." Elisa nearly collapsed, knees buckling. Nora caught her, holding her steady. "Elisa, what did you do?" Elisa wiped blood from her nose. Her voice was weak but steady. "I gave him back what they stole." Harrington stared at her like she was something unnatural. "You touched the gate and survived. That's impossible." Elisa met his gaze. "Get used to disappointment." The cave shook violently, the tide rising faster than any natural cycle. Stalactites rattled, water foamed. The glowing shards trembled overhead. Alia looked around, terrified. "The gate is destabilizing. She's breaking the ritual." "Good." Nora shouted. Gushing water surged into the chamber. Harrington yelled at his followers. "Bind her. Take her hands." But they wouldn't move. They stared at Elisa, terrified. Elisa raised her arm one more time. Light flared. The shard began to fall. And the gate, the memory prison itself, started to collapse. Elisa whispered, through pain and blood and fire, "No more stolen lives." The cavern started to flood. Nora grabbed Elisa's hand. "We need to run. Now." Behind them, Harrington screamed, "You don't understand. Without the gate, memory will consume you." Elisa turned back, eyes blazing. "Then I remember." They ran, as the last light shattered. Chapter 24. The Flooded Hour. Water swallowed the cavern floor in seconds. Elisa ran, hand intertwined with Nora's, each step splashing as a rising tide chased him down the narrow passage. Adam stumbled behind, still dazed, his breathing shallow as fragment of memory returned and collided inside him. Harrington's scream echoed through the cavern. Alia stopped them, but Alia didn't move. She watched the gate collapse, not with rage nor grief, with wonder. "All this time, I thought the sea chose us." Her voice trembled like a child waking from a long nightmare. It chose her. A crack split the ceiling. A violent jet of seawater burst through, knocking Harrington off his feet and into the pool. Cloaked followers scrambled, slipping, screaming. Elisa didn't look back. They sprinted into a narrow tunnel lit only by Elisa's mark, pulsing like a guiding star. "Left," Nora shouted. "There's an exit to the old smuggler's passage." "How do you know?" Elisa panted. "Dad used to bring me here when I was little," Nora said, "before the town started forgetting people." Adam stumbled and braced himself against the wall. "Nora." It was the first full word he had spoken. She froze. Elisa stopped too, heart pounding. Adam looked at his daughter, eyes finally alive. "We have to move," he whispered. "They're coming." He remembered. They reached a fork. Left tunnel sloped upward. Right tunnel sloped downward, toward deeper darkness. Elisa's mark flared, reacting to something in the right passage. Nora noticed. "No, please don't say we're going down." Elisa hesitated. The mark pulsed harder. Something was down there, not a memory, a presence. She shook her head sharply. "We get out first. We survive first." They took the left tunnel. The walls tightened, scraping their shoulders. Water rushed behind them, faster now, as if the entire ocean was forcing its way into the caves. Adam gasped, "I know this place. There's a ladder up ahead. It goes to the cliffs." Elisa pushed forward. Her shoes slipped. Her lungs burned. The tunnel opened into a small chamber. A rusted iron ladder stretched upward toward a circular hatch. "Go!" Elisa pushed Nora toward it. Nora climbed, fast, forcing the heavy hatch open. Wind exploded into the chamber, wet and cold, rain lashing their faces. Elisa turned to Adam. "Your turn." He looked at her. Fear and gratitude tangled in his eyes. "You brought me back." She didn't know what to say. Adam climbed. Nora helped pull him through. Elisa grabbed the ladder, feeling the sea rising around her. That voice, the one only she ever heard, whispered again, soft and urgent, "Don't stop. They're not done." Elisa climbed. The water hit her back like a fist. She reached the surface. Nora grabbed her hand and hauled her out onto the wet grass. They collapsed together on the cliff top, gasping, drenched, alive. Behind them, the hatch slammed shut as the sea surged beneath. For a moment, there was only the storm. Wind, rain, breathing. Nora crawled closer and hugged Elisa fiercely. "You saved him. You saved us." Elisa stared at her shaking hands. The mark still glowed. "Too bright. Too alive. I didn't just return his memories," she whispered. "The gate put something inside me." Adam, exhausted, whispered the thing Elisa feared most. The gate wasn't meant to be opened. Nora turned toward him. "Dad, what do you mean?" He swallowed. "It was meant to be replaced." Lightning split the sky, and far below from the caves, a sound rose, not water, not wind, a roar, alive. Chapter 25. the noise beneath the waves. The roar didn't stop. It grew, deep, resonant, vibrating through the ground beneath them as if the cliffs themselves had lungs. Elisa scrambled to her feet, rain whipping her face. "That's not water," she whispered. Adam staggered back on the edge, staring into the black chasm below. When the gate collapses, the thing underneath wakes. Nora grabbed his arm. "Dad, what thing?" Adam's expression twisted with something between terror and memory. A memory that was never meant to return. Lightning struck the sea, revealing, for a fraction of a second, something massive moving beneath the surface. Not a shape, a shadow, a memory of something that never belonged to the human world. Elisa forced her breathing to slow. The mark on her wrist glowed brighter, hot beneath her skin. What happens if it gets out? Adam looked straight into her eyes. It will make people remember everything they tried to forget, all at once. Nora whispered, "That sounds good." He shook his head violently. Human minds aren't built to contain the full weight of every pain, every loss, every wrong. People will break. The roar rose again, louder, as if answering him. Elisa's pulse hammered. "We need to warn the town." They ran. Valmora Bay, Main Street. Lights flickered inside fogged at windows. The storm had dragged everyone home. Shutters locked. Streets empty. Or so Elisa thought. A figure stood in the middle of the road. Harrington, soaked, unmoving. His coat clung to him like seaweed. His eyes weren't angry anymore. They were hollow, eroded. He stepped toward them, voice shaking. "You destroyed the only order we had." Elisa stepped in front of Nora and Adam. "You stole people. You erased lives." Harrington didn't blink. "We freed them." Lightning illuminated his face. Pale, exhausted, cracked by salt and fear. The gate existed to hold the burden for us. Now that it's gone, the burden seeks a new vessel. The wind whipped, pushing rain sideways. Elisa felt the mark burn hotter, a pulse that synced with the roar below. "You're saying that thing wants me?" Harrington's voice lowered to a reverent whisper. "It already chose you." A tremor shook the street. Shop signs rattled. A street lamp flickered and died. Adam pulled Nora back. Elisa didn't move. "What is it?" she asked. Harrington's lips parted. Memory embodied, pain given form. The shadows surged beneath the cliffs again, closer this time. Elisa clenched her jaw. "I won't let it take anyone else." For the first time, Harrington's mask cracked. Fear, real fear. "Child, you do not understand. If you resist it." Elisa's mark flared like a blade of white fire. "I don't resist." She stepped forward. "I choose." Wind screamed down the street. The roar answered. Nora grabbed Elisa's wrist. Don't face that thing alone." Elisa looked at her, and for the first time since arriving in Valmora Bay, she felt the weight of belonging, but she shook her head gently. "If I don't stop it, the whole town will drown in its own past." Adam looked between them, voice hushed. The gate didn't choose wrongly. It chose someone who remembers pain and still keeps going. More tremors, more roaring. Elisa turned toward the cliffs as the storm swallowed the sky. Then it's time to see what it wants. And she walked toward the edge. Chapter 26. Where the Sea Remembers. The wind was a fist. It shoved at Elisa, tearing at her coat, forcing rain into her eyes until everything blurred into streaks of silver. But the pull beneath her skin, the heat of the mark, guided her like a lighthouse beam in reverse, not out of danger, towards it. Nora and Adam kept up as best they could, boots slipping on the mud-slick trail. "Elisa, we should wait until morning," Nora called out. "It won't wait," Elisa answered. The roar came again, closer now, a vibration in her bones. They reached the breakwater, a rusted, half-abandoned pier that had once sheltered fishing boats before Valmora Bay forgot how to thrive. Waves slammed against the rocks like fists. Far out beyond the pier, something vast shifted just beneath the surface. Not a creature, a consciousness. Elisa stepped onto the pier. Nora grabbed her wrist. Her grip was desperate, rain-slick, shaking. If that thing wants you, we leave. We run. We don't play hero. Elisa turned to her. Nora's face was streaked with rain and fear, her eyes wide and raw. I don't want to lose you. Something cracked in Elisa's chest. Something unguarded. I'm not planning to go anywhere. But they both knew that wasn't a promise Elisa could make. Adam pointed toward the sea. Look. The water shifted, rising, forming not a wave, but a wall, a vertical curtain of ocean, held back by an unseen force. Shapes moved within it, blurred figures suspended in water, caught in the glass of memory. Faces, dozens, hundreds, people erased from Valmora Bay. The walls surged forward, rumbling like the breath of something ancient waking. Elisa stepped to the edge of the pier. I know what you are. The water responded, a pulse of light to the mark on her wrist. The roar came again. This time, it wasn't external. It came from inside her skull. Remember. Elisa staggered back. Nora caught her before she fell. What is it saying? Elisa swallowed hard. It wants me to open the memories. All of them. At once. Adam paled. You can't. The human mind. I'm not opening them inside me, Elisa said. She looked at the wall of water and the suspended faces within it. I'm giving them back. She raised her marked hand. The sea answered. Water lifted, spiraling upward from the pier, wrapping around her wrist like a living ribbon, connecting her to the wall of memory. Elisa squeezed her eyes shut and let the memories flood through her. Pain, grief, love, loss, every life erased, every voice silenced, every forgotten moment. Her body shook. Her mark burned white hot. Her mind strained. Elisa, let go. Nora shouted. If I let go, Elisa gasped, they're lost forever. Lightning fractured the sky. The memory wall began to collapse toward the town. Elisa forced the energy away from her, pushing it outward toward the cliffs, the streets, the houses. The mark seared. Elisa screamed, remember. The wave broke. It didn't drown the town. It washed through it. Lights turned on behind dark windows. Doors swung open. Gasps carried through the wind. Across Valmora Bay, people who had forgotten suddenly remembered. Loved ones lost. Children erased. Parents wiped clean. Memory rushed back into the world. The wall of water crashed down. The sea went silent. Elisa collapsed to her knees on the pier, shaking. Nora caught her, wrapping both arms around her, pulling her against her chest. You did it. You saved them. Elisa's voice was a whisper. No, look. Far below in the dark, something else moved, not staying submerged, rising. The sea hadn't chosen her to restore memory. It had chosen her for something far worse. It had chosen her to open the path. Chapter 27. What wakes in the deep? The roar returned, not as a sound, as a pressure, a vibration rising from the sea through the stones beneath their feet. Elisa steadied herself against the soaked railing of the pier. Her body trembled, her mark still glowing like an ember beneath her skin. Nora kept her arm around her, refusing to let go. Tell me we're done, Nora pleaded. Tell me the memories were enough. Elisa wanted to, but the sea didn't lie. A wave heaved, lifting itself against gravity, towering into the storm. For a second, the water held a shape, not quite human, not quite anything else. Then it crashed back into the dark. Adam whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. The gate wasn't the prison. The gate was a seal. Elisa's throat tightened, and I broke it. Thunder cracked the sky open. Valmora Bay, town square. They ran through the storm toward the center town. Windows were lit, doors open. People stood in the rain, crying, hugging, screaming names of those they had forgotten for years. A mother held a teenage boy by the face, staring at him as if afraid he might vanish again. I remember your voice, she whispered through sobs. A fisherman dropped to his knees, weeping, as his wife, the one lost at sea 10 years ago, stood before him, alive, drenched, trembling. Memory had returned them, all of them. Elisa felt her lungs tighten. Nora grabbed her shoulders. You gave people their lives back. And freed something else, Elisa murmured. She wasn't sure if she meant it for Nora or herself. Town hall. Doors burst open. The doors slammed open with a violent burst of wind. Harrington stumbled in, drenched, wild-eyed. Listen to me. People recoiled, instinctively afraid. You are celebrating the wrong miracle, he shouted. Memory has weight. Pain has weight. He pointed at Elisa, and she released all of it into the world. Elisa felt dozens of eyes turned toward her. Nora stepped in front, shielding her with her body. She saved this town. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. Harrington's voice cracked. We kept the pain sealed for a reason. Adam stepped onto the town hall steps. His voice was hoarse, but steady. You didn't seal pain. You erased people. Harrington shook his head violently. You don't understand, none of you. He stepped into the square, rain pelting his face. Memory was never the threat. The thing beneath the memories is... The ground trembled. A street lamp flickered, then bent, metal groaning. People gasped. Elisa felt the mark burn, not from the outside. From within, a voice echoed in her mind, deep as the ocean trench. You opened the door. Now let me through. She flinched. Nora caught her again. Elisa? What's wrong? Elisa's voice came out cracked. It's speaking to me. Adam whispered, we have to leave the town. Now. Lightning hit the sea again. Something answered. Not a wave. Not a creature. A memory made flesh. Elisa's vision blurred. Her knees buckled. Nora grabbed her by the face, forcing Elisa to meet her eyes. Stay with me. Whatever you do, don't let it in. Elisa swallowed. Her mark flared white, and for the first time, she answered the voice inside her head. No. The wind stopped. Rain froze midair. Every sound died. Time held its breath, and the sea whispered back, yes. Chapter 28. The mind at the edge of the sea. The world had stopped. Rain hung in midair, suspended droplets like strands of crystal beads. Wind froze mid-howl, a scream with no air left to carry it. But Elisa could still move, which meant the thing inside her head controlled time. Nora stood inches away, hand still touching Elisa's cheek, motionless like a photograph. Her expression was pure fear. Elisa whispered, voice cracking, please don't let this be real. A pulse of light shot from the mark under her skin. Another voice answered, not from outside, but from the center of her skull. You called me. Elisa clenched her fists. I didn't call anything. I tried to return what you stole. I was what was stolen. A ripple passed beneath her feet, the cobblestones bending like water. The world blurred around her, and with a sickening lurch, she wasn't in Valmora Bay anymore. She was standing on a memory, a corridor of black water stretching infinitely in both directions. Every surface reflected light, like polished obsidian. Glass panels lined the walls, floating, suspended, each one holding a moment. Voices whispered behind them. Where are you? Elisa, don't go. Please remember me. Elisa backed away. No, I didn't ask for this. You opened doors. I walked through them. Get out of my head. You have no idea who you are. The glass panels shifted. One slid toward her, its surface shimmering. Inside, Elisa saw a hospital room, a little girl, a heart monitor, a woman crying into her hands. Elisa recognized the scene. That's not yours to show. It is your first forgotten. You let her go. The heart monitor flatlined. Elisa's breath punched out of her. Stop it. Every memory you hid from yourself, I can unlock. Another panel slid in front of her. A teenage Elisa, crying alone in a school art room. Someone had destroyed her mural. Her hands were shaking. She cleared the paint with a rag, erasing what she loved. Why are you showing me this? Pain is power. You are well of it. Elisa's mark pulsed like a heartbeat. I'm not your vessel. You are the only one who can hold me. Valmora Bay. Frozen square simultaneous. Nora suddenly gasped, movement returning. Time lurched back into motion. Rain hit the ground again. Nora snapped her head around, panic electrifying her. Elisa's body stood completely still in the square, eyes open, pupils blown wide, glowing with a soft white light. Nora shook her. "Elisa, please come back." Adam grabbed Nora's wrist. "Don't touch her when the gate is inside her. It's not safe." Nora jerked free. "I don't care. I'm not losing her." Harrington turned toward them, realization creeping across his face. It's not taking her. It's learning her. Memory path between worlds. Elisa stepped backward, refusing to look at more panels. "Why me?" "Because you remember pain and still move forward." The panels rearranged themselves. 3 new ones floated before her. Elisa, exhausted in London, humiliated by her former boss. Elisa boarding the plane to England alone. Elisa's first night in Valmora Bay. Tears, fear, determination. Your life is made of memory. You refuse to surrender. Elisa swallowed hard. "And that's what keeps me human." The voice turned colder. "No, that's what makes you mine." Panel shattered. Elisa fell, plummeting into darkness, until Valmora Bay, the square. Her body jerked violently. Rain hammered the streets. Her mark flared in a blinding flash. Nora's voice cut through the chaos. "Elisa, fight it." Elisa's lips parted, but her voice wasn't her own. "I remember everything." The sea roared. The town lights blew out, and something began to rise from the water beyond the cliffs. Not a creature, a form made entirely of memory. A shape built from every loss, every grief, every forgotten pain. It came for her. Chapter 29. The Thing That Knows Our Names. Elisa's breath hitched. The mark on her wrist glowed like a wildfire trapped beneath her skin. From the cliffs, a massive shadow rose. Not with the movement of flesh, but with the impossible weight of memory too big to be forgotten. It towered above the sea, a shifting mass of silhouettes and faces. A collage of memories, all fused into a single, impossible shape. Children, elderly, people who were lost, drowned, erased, each appearing for a second in its surface before dissolving into the next. The storm fell silent. Nora whispered, barely audible, "What is that?" Adam swallowed hard. "It's every memory the gate ever held." Harrington stepped forward, rain streaming down his face. His voice cracked, reverent, terrified. The manifestation of remembering. Elisa's voice came out soft, raw, the one they worshipped. The shadow responded, not aloud, but inside everyone's skull. Remember or drown. Every person in the square clutched their head, choking, sobbing, memories crashing into them at once. A woman screamed, "I can't remember everything. IT hurts." A man fell to his knees, sobbing, "My son, I remember him. I remember losing him. I can't." Elisa saw a child clutching her mother's leg, terrified at what she didn't understand. The manifestation moved again, shifting closer to land. But it wasn't walking. It was being pulled toward Elisa. Elisa's mind, the memory corridor. The black corridor returned. Panels pulsed around her, each one replaying a moment of her own life she had forced herself to forget. Her former boss humiliating her in front of the full design team. "You ruin everything you touch." Her hands shaking, paint cracking, her dreams slipping through her fingers. Elisa gritted her teeth. "I'm not broken." The memory dissolved. Another panel slid into place. Elisa at 17, crying and cleaning her mural, erasing her art rather than letting anyone see it ruined. "If I hide the damage, maybe no one will know I failed." Elisa squeezed her eyes shut. "Stop showing me this. You erase your own memory. You are not different from the gate." Elisa stepped closer, trembling. "I erase pain so I can move forward." Pain is power. Pain is not identity. Her hand slammed against the glass. Shatter. The panel dissolved into shards of light. Valmora Bay, the square. Elisa's body jerked, her eyes glowing bright white. The manifestation stopped, towering over the square, rain cascading through its translucent form. Its voice entered every mind. Give me the keeper, or all will remember. Nora stood between Elisa and the monster, trembling but defiant. You don't get to choose her. The creature tilted its head. Faces stretched through its surface, shifting, merging, until one face formed clearly. Elisa's. You are mine. It spoke, using Elisa's features to say the words. Nora's voice cracked, but she didn't step aside. She doesn't belong to you. Elisa finally exhaled. She stepped forward. No one gets to own me. Not the gate. Not memory. Not pain. The manifestation surged forward, a tidal wave of memory and grief, and everything ever forgotten rushing toward her. Elisa raised her marked hand, palm out. The mark erupted with light. Inside her mind, panels shattered in a chain reaction, thousands breaking, a storm of light and memory. You opened doors, the voice roared. I walked through them. Elisa screamed back. Then I'll close them. Valmora Bay reality. The manifestation hit Elisa, but instead of crushing her, it collapsed inward. The memories didn't flood into her. She forced them outward again, back to each person they belonged to. A fisherman collapsed to his knees, clutching his wife. A mother hugged the teenage girl who had vanished 10 years ago. Memory returned. Pain returned. But so did love. The manifestation shrank. Slowly, violently. Face after face dissolved. Whispers turned to wind. The storm broke. Water fell from the air like ordinary rain. The creature shrieked without sound, its body ripping apart into thousands of shards of light. And then, silence. The ocean went still. The light vanished. Elisa staggered. Nora caught her before she fell. Elisa, you're here. You're here. Elisa's voice was a whisper. It's gone. Harrington fell to his knees, broken. The gate is closed. Adam stood behind Nora, eyes full of quiet astonishment. No, not closed. He looked at Elisa, not fearful, not worshiping. Grateful, rewritten. Chapter 30. After the silence, the storm had rinsed the world clean. The sky, hours ago black and violet, now opened into a pale lavender dawn. Light settled on the drenched streets, on the shattered remnants of the festival lights, on people waking from shock, searching for each other, clinging, crying, remembering. Elisa sat on the cold stone edge of the square's fountain. Her clothes were soaked, hair stuck to her face. Every muscle in her body trembled. Exhaustion, adrenaline, the hollow ache of too many memories rushing back at once. Nora sat beside her, shoulder against shoulder. You did it, she whispered. You saved them. Elisa didn't answer immediately. She looked at her hands, at the faint glow that still threaded beneath her skin, like embers that refuse to die. I didn't save them, Elisa said quietly. I gave them back what was theirs. Across the square, a man lifted his elderly father into a ferocious hug. A woman cried into the jacket of her teenage daughter, a daughter who shouldn't have been there at all. They remembered their losses. They remembered their love. No one worshipped the light now. No one begged for forgetfulness. They held each other. Elisa wiped a tear that wasn't from rain. Nora leaned her forehead lightly against Elisa's temple. You didn't have to do it alone. Elisa's lips curved, faint but real. I didn't. Adam and Harrington. Adam and Harrington stood a few meters away, near the broken scaffold that once held the gate's projection. Harrington looked ruined, his coat torn, glasses cracked, eyes hollow. I dedicated my life to that presence, he whispered, to a God that never cared. Adam placed a hand on his shoulder. It wasn't a God, it was a wound. Harrington looked at Elisa, like seeing her for the first time without a crown on her head. And she, Adam shook his head. She chose humanity over power. That makes her more dangerous than any god you ever served. Nora and Elisa, the edge of the square. Nora stood and held out her hand. Come on. Where? To the pier. To breathe. Elisa hesitated, then took her hand. Valmora Bay, old wooden pier. Boards creaked under their weight. The sea smelled of salt and second chances. When they reached the railing, Elisa looked out at the quiet horizon. All my life, I wanted to forget the worst parts of me. Nora squeezed her hand. You don't have to erase your pain to be free of it. Elisa breathed deeply, like she hadn't in years. Her voice was soft. I want to stay here for a while. Paint. Live simply. Stop running from myself. Nora's smile was small, but it held worlds. Do you want to do that alone? Elisa turned toward her. Do you want to stay? Nora brushed a wet strand of hair behind Elisa's ear. I'm not going anywhere. Their foreheads touched. No need for grand declarations. Just gravity. Just truth. A final whisper. A wave broke against the pier. For a heartbeat, Elisa felt something, a flicker beneath her skin. Not power. Not demand. Just a message. You are not the keeper anymore. But you will always remember. Elisa exhaled. Good. She took Nora's hand again, warm, solid, real, and together they walked back toward the waking town, toward coffee shops with fog windows, toward ordinary days, toward life, a life where memory was not a curse, where love didn't need to be forgotten to be safe. Valmora Bay had its dawn, and so did they. Epilogue. The light that stayed. 6 months later, early summer Valmora Bay, Cornwall. The town smelled of fresh bread, seaweed, and morning tide. Seagulls circled above the harbor as fishing boats returned with their first catch of the day. The festival banners, new ones, bright ones, fluttered in a sleepy breeze. Valmora Bay looked ordinary now, and that was the miracle. The art studio, the sign on the small storefront used to say, for rent long term. Now it read, Penrose and Hart, studio and gallery local art, seascapes, coffee and scones. Inside, Elisa stood barefoot on the paint-splattered floor, a brush tucked behind her ear. Her hair was tied up, a smear of cerulean blue on one cheek. A half-finished canvas stood on the easel. It wasn't abstract. It wasn't surreal. It wasn't a dream. It was Valmora Bay at sunrise. Ordinary. Beautiful. Nora appeared behind her, carrying 2 steaming mugs. You forgot a drink again, Nora said. I didn't forget, Elisa replied with a smile. I was thinking. Nora leaned against her back, chin on her shoulder. You've been thinking for 10 minutes. Coffee has been suffering on the counter. Elisa laughed. A soft, alive sound that once seemed impossible. The couple from the pier. A bell above the door chimed. Adam walked in, wearing a windbreaker and carrying a folder filled with documents. Morning, he said. Council approved a museum restoration. Elisa raised an eyebrow. The old abbey? They're reopening it as a history exhibit. Adam smirked. No cult rooms, no mysterious artifacts. Just dusty manuscripts and boring guided tours. Nora rolled her eyes dramatically. Finally, a normal hobby for this town. Adam tapped the folder. Speaking of normal, Harrington left Valmora Bay. Sells pottery in Bristol now. Nora blinked. He makes bowls. Surprisingly nice ones, Adam said. Therapeutic. Elisa exchanged a glance with Nora. That silent, private language they had developed. People can change. The last memory. Adam hesitated, then looked at Elisa. There's something I need to ask. Go ahead. Do you still feel it? That power? Elisa touched her sternum, the place that once burned like fire. She searched with familiar hum, the pull, the inevitable command. Nothing, just her heartbeat. No, she said, but sometimes a memory feels louder, clearer than it should be. Adam nodded slowly. Maybe it didn't take something from you. Maybe it gave something back. Nora slipped her hand into Elisa's. She doesn't need power. She needs life. Elisa smiled, grateful, grounded. The canvas. Nora looked at the painting. Finish it. Elisa dipped her brush into yellow ochre. One stroke at a time, she painted the sunlight breaking through the clouds. A small signature at the bottom. E. Navarro. No titles. No symbols. No prophecy. Just a name. Her name. Outside the bench facing the sea. Later, they sat on the wooden bench overlooking the harbor. The same bench where the world once tried to break them. Elisa leaned her head on Nora's shoulder. I used to think memory was something that trapped me. Nora kissed her temple. Memory is where we keep the people we love. Elisa threaded her fingers with Nora's. The water sparkled in the sun, 1,000 tiny mirrors. Thank you for staying. Always. Final line. The tide rose. Wind moved through the grass. Valmora Bay breathed. Elisa closed her eyes and let the warmth of the day rest on her. For the first time in her life, the light belonged to her. Thank you for listening to The Cave of Shadows on the Inktail channel. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook. See you in the next journey.